Chapter 1444. Young Master, I heard that you accepted a girl from the Su family as your maid. In the main hall of the Su family, Hua Mingxi sat in a lower seat with a smile. Ling Xiao smiled and turned to look at Su Yan. What do you think, Mingxi? The girl that young master likes must be the best in the world. Sigh. Mingxi is so envious. All right, Mingxi, let's talk about business. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. His expression was inexplicably dignified. All right, young master, I have already talked with Senior Qingshan. The Su family is no longer what it used to be, but Su Buqian's family still controls the Su family. If you want them to return, I'm afraid it will be a little difficult, but Hua Mingxi smiled and looked at Su Yu. It's not a problem to arrange Miss Su Yu into the Su family alone. Su Yu? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly and the smile on his lips deepened. It's fine as long as Mingxi decides. If Ling Xiao hadn't met Su Luan before, he would have been caught off guard by Hua Mingxi's actions. After all, with his status, it wasn't difficult to arrange Su Yin into the Heavenly Saint Business Alliance. But if he wanted Su Yin to have a high position in the Su family, he would have to use a lot of means. However, with Ling Xiao's understanding of Hua Mingxi, he wasn't too surprised at this time. This woman had shown how scheming she was in Dao Heaven City. With regard to Ling Xiao, she was more of using him than relying on him sincerely. In other words, if there was a man who was more useful to her in the future, Hua Mingxi would definitely kick Ling Xiao away without hesitation and throw herself into the arms of others. And this was the reason why Ling Xiao didn't intend to take her in. I think so. Hua Mingxi still had a warm smile on her face. She didn't even look at Su Yin from the beginning to the end, although she wasn't sure if Ling Xiao and Su Yin had any relationship before. However, she had to be extremely cautious when dealing with the young master of the Taigu Ling people. These young masters and successors who truly stood at the peak of the world. Which one of them wasn't a scheming person? One must always be on guard against others. Although Miss Su Yin is more talented, she is also more likely to attract attention. Once someone secretly investigates, there's always a risk of being exposed. Miss Su Yu's talent is also extremely outstanding, but regardless of appearance or realm, there is a gap between her and Miss Su Yin. Hence, I feel that she is more suitable for this plan. Hua Mingxi's words were not blunt, and even Su Yu's face showed a trace of embarrassment. However, everything she said was also reasonable, and no one could find fault with it. The tallest tree in the forest is the first to be destroyed by the wind. Compared to Su Yin, Su Yu was indeed more ordinary and wouldn't attract attention because he was too stunning. Of course, Hua Mingxi had another motive for doing this. Su Yin was simply too demonic. No one knew if she would become arrogant after she ascended to heaven. With Ling Xiao's support, she might be able to escape Hua Mingxi's control. On the other hand, Su Yu is much easier to control. What Mingxi said is extremely reasonable, but since I have accepted Su Yin as my maid, Yin, you will follow me in the future. Ling Xiao nodded and chuckled, and had no objection to this. From the beginning to the end, he didn't intend to let Hua Mingxi go. What she was doing now was only accelerating her own death. Yes, young master. Su Yin bowed slightly, but her beautiful eyes flashed with a touch of gloominess. Young master had arranged for her to be in this world of souls in order to use Hua Mingxi to return to the Heavenly Sage Business Alliance. However, it was obvious that Hua Mingxi didn't take the bait. The two geniuses of the Su family returned to the upper realm together. This is really a joyous matter. Come, prepare the banquet. Su Qingshan waved his hand, and many maids and servants immediately came to the hall, bringing wine and delicacies. Ling Xiao and Hua Mingxi sat side by side, chatting and laughing, without showing a trace of displeasure. With Su Luan as a chess piece, Su Yan's road to return to the Su family was more open. Hua Mingxi was insignificant. Young master, where do you plan to go next? During the banquet, Hua Mingxi also asked Ling Xiao about his plan to go to the lower realm. Ling Xiao didn't hide anything at all, and directly told her that he coveted the sinful immortal's relic. Since young master is here, as long as the relic appears, it won't be able to escape from young master. Hua Mingxi smiled bitterly, as if she was a little disappointed. But in the next moment, a hint of worry appeared in her eyes. Young master, when I went to the lower realm, I heard that the young master of the demon-controlling sect also came to the world of souls, and seemed to be quite dissatisfied with young master for killing the disciples of the demon-controlling sect. Oh, the young master of the demon-controlling sect? Ling Xiao was slightly stunned, and a handsome figure in a blue robe appeared in his mind. If he guessed correctly, the young man hiding in the ancient forest that day should be the young master of the demon-controlling sect. 14,000 points of providence was a pretty good harvest. That's right. And I also heard that the demon-controlling sect seems to have an extremely powerful inheritance in the world of souls. After saying that, Hua Mingxi suddenly smiled. Of course, how would the young master care about these lower realm forces? I heard that when young master went to the lower realm that day, he even killed Shi Haoyan of the Shi family. In Hua Mingxi's opinion, these two pieces of news were a favor that she gave to Ling Xiao, and it could be considered as making up for her rudeness of directly choosing Su Yu. Although Hua Mingxi was on guard against Ling Xiao, if the Hua family wanted to control the Heavenly Saint Merchant Union, they still couldn't do without the young master of the Ling people. Mingxi is still the most meticulous one. The demon-controlling sect is an opponent that can't be underestimated. Ling Xiao raised his wine cup and lightly clinked it with Hua Mingxi's. Then he raised his head and drank it in one gulp. What do you plan to do next, Mingxi? Young master, you must be joking. Mingxi's talent is ordinary. How can I compete with all the monsters in the world? I plan to bring Sister Su Yu back to the Azure world. With Hua Mingxi's talent, she was indeed not at the top of the Azure world. Even if she stayed in the lower realm, it wouldn't be her turn to fight for the treasure. What she cared more about was the ownership of the Heavenly Saint Merchant Union. You're going back just like that? Young master, there are still a few months before the Heavenly Saint Merchant Union selects the young master. Mingxi still needs to go back early to make some preparations. When the time comes. Young master, these are your spiritual materials. I asked someone to collect some more. Hua Mingxi handed a Qinkuan bag to Ling Xiao, and the latter immediately revealed a meaningful smile. Mingxi, happy cooperation. Young master, happy cooperation. At this moment, both of them had a sincere smile on their faces, but no one knew what they were thinking in their hearts. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Ling Xiao didn't stay in the Su family for long. After bidding farewell to Hua Mingxi, they agreed to meet again in the upper realm. And he brought Xinyuan Weiyang, Yi Qingchan, and Su Yin to Feng Prefecture. Over there was a chess piece that the Ling people had arranged in this world. Ling Xiao had already found out that this chess piece had already established a sect and became an overlord of Feng Prefecture. According to Ling Xiao's guess, if a child of destiny appeared in Feng Prefecture, such an overlord force would most likely become a stepping stone for some people. Moreover, the Ling people's setting was originally that of a villain. They were high above the masses and acted ruthlessly. It was easy for them to attract the hatred of the child of destiny. In the sky, the dragon carriage was moving horizontally, heading towards Feng Prefecture at an extremely fast speed. Chapter 1445. In Misty Cloud City, Hua Mingxi stood with her hands behind her back and looked at the dragon carriage. At this moment, there was no smile on her face. There was only endless coldness. Asking a tiger for its skin. Although she could gain temporary authority, she still risked being eaten by the tiger. She and Ling Xiao were just using each other to get what they needed. This was a line that they were smart enough not to cross. After all, in this world, everyone had their own way of looking at the snow. Everyone had their own way of looking at things. Ling Xiao helped her to get the power of the Heavenly Sacred Business Alliance, and she secretly provided many spiritual materials and treasures for Ling Xiao to fight for the heavens. This was Hua Mingxi's choice, and it was also her bet. Miss, are we really going back to the upper world? Behind Hua Mingxi, a white-haired old woman of the 8th level of the Saint Realm appeared. Her eyes were full of vicissitudes. The current Heavenly Sacred Business Alliance was on the verge of chaos. If Hua Mingxi could not turn the tide, when the little god of wealth of the Liu clan ascended to the position of the young lord, perhaps the heavenly sacred business alliance would completely change its structure. Although the business alliance was jointly controlled by the three aristocratic families, it was impossible to only rely on the three families to run such a huge business alliance. Therefore, in addition to the Liu, Hua, and Su clans, the Heavenly Sacred Business Alliance also included many ancient clans and sections. And these people would eventually become the chess pieces that controlled the fate of the Hua and Su clans. Let's go back. With Ling Xiao here, not to mention these heavens' pride from the lower world, even the descendants of the young lords of the Qing San continent would not be able to escape death. It's better for us not to get involved in this chaos. Hua Mingxi nodded indifferently, until footsteps came from behind her. A smile appeared on her face again. Young Lord Hua, so you are here. Father asked me to give this Chinquin bag to you. Su Yu's figure appeared behind Hua Mingxi. Her face was full of humble expectation. If Su Kai had succeeded in fighting for the position back then, her status would have been the same as Hua Mingxi's. However, this immortal path was full of twists and turns. Sometimes, one's fate would change overnight. Thank you, Miss Su Yu. Do you remember what I told you? Hua Mingxi took the Chinquin bag and looked at Su Yu with bright eyes. Don't worry, young master. Su Yu will remember. When we reach the azure sky world, Su Yu will listen to young master's orders. Although, in the end, she was not able to become Lord Ling Zhao's servant, nor was she able to marry Yin Sun as she wished and become the divine empress of the 9 provinces. But compared to Su Yin, she was undoubtedly luckier. She was recognized by young Master Hua and was allowed to return to the Su family. Although this path was dangerous, as long as she could succeed, it was not something a mere servant girl could compare to. Su Yin, you're the one who lost. That's great. Hua Mingxi nodded and chuckled. She took the initiative to take Su Yu's hand and walk toward the entrance. However, just as the two of them were about to disappear, Hua Mingxi suddenly turned her head and glanced at the old saint stage woman. Her eyes were cold. Seeing this, the old woman immediately nodded. Her figure once again hid in the void and disappeared on the spot. Until Hua Mingxi and Su Yu were far away, there was a sudden fluctuation in the ancestral land of the Su family. A formation stood tall in the void, enveloping the entire Su family. Then, endless blood qi filled the air. Countless disciples of the Su family rushed out of the main hall in panic. They wanted to escape, but to their despair, they found that the entire ancestral land had been sealed. The 8th level of the Saint Stage was the most powerful existence in the world of souls. Su Qingshan and the others could not compete with it. Above the void, several figures appeared again. Among them, the leader was a young man in black. His face had long been covered by the clouds, but there was a demonic aura in his eyes. That's right, the one who just left was Ling Zhao's stainless Taoist body. His real body had long been hidden in the void, waiting for Hua Mingxi to leave. Although he had predicted that the young master of the Hua family would not give Su Kai and the rest a way out, he knew that the young master of the Hua family would not let Su Kai and the rest live. But he still underestimated the ruthlessness of this woman. As soon as she left with Su Yu, she turned around and sent a protector to slaughter the Su family. However, in this way, it saved Ling Xiao a lot of trouble. After all, Su Kai and the others were not dead. It was still a flaw. Now, everyone in Misty Cloud City knew that the Su family had provoked several demonic sections. Therefore, it was not surprising that the entire family was slaughtered. The 9 states was in chaos, and the various sects kept attacking. Countless cultivators died every day. This kind of thing would at most be discussed for a few days, and then it would be forgotten. The dangers of this world were ultimately in the hearts of people. 8th level of the Saint Stage. Are you confident? Ling Xiao turned his head and glanced at Xiong Huan, Shirpatian, and the barbaric devil. If it were not for the fact that the heavenly Tao of the lower realm only allowed the Saint Stage to descend, he could casually send out a martial ancestor to kill this old woman on the spot. Of course, Although Xiong Huan and the others' cultivation was below the 8th level, their combat strength was not comparable to ordinary saints. Even if a great demon who had once stood tall in the 9 heavens died, its will would still be immortal. Moreover, in the lower realm, they did not have to worry about their identity. "Don't worry, my lord." Xiong Huan and the others bowed, and a shocking fighting spirit surged in their eyes. "Forget it. Let's get rid of this old thing first before chasing after Huamingxi." Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. Demonic veins flowed in his eyes, as if a demonic god had descended, shocking the world. It was not that he did not trust Xiong Huan and the others, but now that they had just come to the lower realm, he did not want them to suffer any harm and affect his next plan. With him here and the 4 of them attacking, an 8th level Saint Stage old thing was not worth mentioning. Buzz! At this moment, the formation in the sky above the Su family's land suddenly dissipated. An old figure hurriedly walked out and was about to chase after Huamingxi. However, before her figure could fly out, her eyes quietly narrowed. At this moment, she seemed to see the formation veins connecting into a seal and crushing down from the sky, completely stopping her in her tracks. The old woman's first reaction was not to panic, but to calmly take out a voice transmission talisman to warn Huamingxi. Seeing this scene, Ling Zhao's smile grew wider. He suddenly waved his hand, and Xiong Huan and the others immediately rushed down. In this ancient universe formation, all divine senses were blocked. Since he wanted to kill Huamingxi, how could he be careless? This woman was more difficult to deal with than many of the heavens' wills he had encountered. "Damn it, who are you?" The old woman frowned and glanced at the dim talisman in her hand. A trace of gloomy resentment finally appeared in her old eyes. However, Ling Xiao was too lazy to answer her question. Soul light bloomed in his eyes, and his pupils turned into a strange purple-black lotus. Buzz! Suddenly, the old woman's expression changed drastically, and her holy intent soared into the sky. At this moment, she seemed to feel a scalp-numbing wave of heat quietly enveloping the space around her. Chapter 1446. You're courting death. The white-haired old woman shouted in shock. She pushed her skinny palms out in an attempt to stop the heat wave. However, Xiong Huan and the other 2 suddenly descended from the sky. Fist marks and saber radiance pressed down, piercing through the entire sky. The old woman's cultivation was at the 8th grade saint realm, but she was still sent flying several feet away by the attacks of the 3 people in a fluster. However, before she could defend herself, black flames suddenly broke through the void and swept toward her. The black flames were vast and mighty, like a forbidden lotus, enveloping the old woman's figure. The heat that originated from her soul, blood, and bones almost instantly caused a trace of paleness to appear on her face. However, at this moment, Xiong Huan and the other 2 rushed over angrily from different directions. Their divine power was unparalleled, and their killing intent shook the sky. Thus, under the restraint of Ling Zhao's Polychoria divine art, this 8th level saint powerhouse was almost reduced to a live target for Xiong Huan and the others. Countless fist marks and saber radiance continued to fall, destroying the holy will on her body. Even her physical body and bones were shattered. Seeing this scene, Ling Zhao's smile grew wider. A black vortex quietly appeared in his eyes, and his figure strangely disappeared on the spot. This eye technique also originated from the Polychoria divine art that Shi Hao Ian's brother gave him out of kinship. It could temporarily travel through space and kill people without leaving a trace. However, this kind of travel was extremely limited. With Ling Zhao's strength, he could travel a distance of several hundred meters at most. Any further, and it would be a bit difficult. Feeling the sudden strange wave behind her, the white-haired old woman's expression changed. She stretched out her hands, and there seemed to be sacred runes condensing in her palms, wanting to force Xiong Huan and the others back. Immortal light and runes bloomed alternately. If not for the suppression of the ancient universe formation, just a wisp of the wave would be enough to destroy the entire misty cloud city. But in the face of the old woman's attack, Xiong Huan and Brute Devil didn't panic at all. There was even a hint of mockery on their faces. The two looked at each other and stretched out their hands, grabbing the old woman's hands out of thin air. Suddenly, the old woman's expression froze, and a trace of despair suddenly appeared in her eyes. A pitch-black blade directly pierced through her chest, causing blood to spurt out. Before the old woman could react, a strange devouring force devoured her bloodline and spirit. Ling Xiao withdrew the devil blade and looked up at the sky. From the old woman's soul sea, he already knew the whereabouts of Hua Mingxi. He immediately waved his hand to withdraw the ancient universe formation and chased after the two of them. Young Master Hua, the upper realm must be very big, right? There must be many experts, right? At the border of the cloud state, at the peak of an ancient mountain, Suyu stood behind Hua Mingxi, his eyes full of expectations. Ever since she was born, she knew that the Su clan was the top clan in the Azure Sky world. However, it just so happened that his father, Su Kai, had failed in the struggle for the throne and had only brought a few hundred people to flee to the death spirit world. It had already been several thousand years since then. Yes, on Hua Mingxi's face, there was obviously some impatience and even a faint uneasiness. It was reasonable to say that with the second Elder's cultivation, killing a few people of the third or fourth level of the Saint Realm was almost instantaneous. However, she had been waiting here for a full hour, and there was still no trace of the second Elder. Could it be that something had happened? Hua Mingxi's bright eyes trembled. She took out the sound-transmitting talisman and tried to contact the white-haired old woman. Second Elder? Second Elder? Can you hear me? There was no response. Hua Mingxi frowned slightly and turned to look at Su Yu. In your Su clan, other than Su Qingshan, are there any other experts? Other experts? Su Yu was obviously stunned and shook his head slightly. No, the strongest in my Su clan is Ancestor Qingshan. According to my father, Ancestor Qingshan's cultivation was originally at the peak of the Saint Realm, but he was seriously injured and gradually fell. In addition, the spiritual qi in the death spirit world is too thin. So, enough. Hua Mingxi waved her hand, and the uneasiness in her heart grew stronger. She did not believe that Su Yu had the guts to lie to her. However, with the second Elder's cultivation, how could there be an accident in such a place in the lower realm? Unless she had encountered an expert from the upper realm. However, even so, it was not easy to kill an 8th grade Saint Realm expert. Moreover, the second Elder did not even have time to send her a trace of news. Could it be? Inexplicably, Hua Mingxi thought of a person, or rather, only he had such power in his hands. Ling Xiao. However, Hua Mingxi could not figure out the reason for him to do so. The two of them were now considered to be allies, and each of them took what they needed. Ling Xiao did not have the slightest benefit by killing the second Elder. Or was he just using this method to tell her not to make decisions on her own in the future? Or was it the Liu clan? Let's go. Hua Mingxi took a deep breath, and her eyes were faintly dignified. No matter what she had to do now was to return to the Qing Tsang continent as soon as possible. This kind of enemy hiding in the dark was really a little terrifying. Young Master Hua, didn't you say to wait? Shut up. Hua Mingxi shouted softly and immediately lifted her feet to walk toward the entrance. However, just at the moment when her figure moved, she suddenly heard the sound of a saber suddenly resounding in the distance. She saw a ray of black light piercing the sky and slashing horizontally. Hua Mingxi's face almost instantly turned pale. When she turned her head again, Su Yu, who was behind her, had been cut into pieces by the saber radiance. Blood spilled, and at this time, the face of the former young master of the Su clan was still full of doubts. Unfortunately, her vitality had been completely extinguished. Hua Mingxi's eyes trembled, and she looked up at the void above. She saw a figure shrouded in demonic aura quietly standing there. A pair of demonic runes flashed in his eyes, evil and cold. "Who are you?" Hua Mingxi frowned slightly, and she felt that this demonic figure was somewhat familiar. "What do you want? I can satisfy you. Spiritual stones, treasures, status. Buzz." However, before her voice fell, the demonic figure raised his hand again and slashed out again. In an instant, the sky was torn apart. The black light lingered, and it could cut the heaven and earth. Damn it! Hua Mingxi's face changed greatly, and her mind was full of thoughts. However, with her strength, it was obvious that she was no match for this demonic figure. She could only leave first. Buzz! The saber radiance slashed down, dividing heaven and earth and destroying everything. Hua Mingxi clenched her silver teeth and suddenly raised her hand to cast a divine talisman to meet the vast demonic force. A spiritual figure appeared in the sky, and it was ancient and vicissitudes of life. His aura had obviously surpassed the scope of the Saint Realm, but in the lower realm, it was forcibly suppressed to the peak of the Saint Realm. As the spiritual figure stretched out his hand, it was like a divine palm print, surrounded by thousands of divine runes, and directly crushed the saber radiance in his hand. Seeing this scene, Hua Mingxi's pretty face suddenly raised a touch of coldness. She took a deep look at the demonic figure and turned to leave. However, at this moment, she clearly saw a thin and weak figure standing quietly behind her, and on his face there was a warm and gentle smile. Chapter 1447. Little junior brother. Hua Mingxi was stunned, and she rubbed her eyes hard. At this moment, she could see a black-clothed figure standing quietly in front of the ancient forest, looking at her with a smile. Zhang Jiuji. Suddenly, Hua Mingxi seemed to have thought of something, and her face turned even paler. Why are you here?" They had not seen each other for a year since they parted in Dao Sky City. When Hua Mingxi and Lei Yin returned to the demon region, they went to the Heaven and Earth Tower to ask their master about Zhang Jiuji. However, the Heaven and Earth Tower had already disappeared into the clouds. No matter how Hua Mingxi shouted, her master did not appear. The only person who could open the Heaven and Earth Tower from the outside was her eldest senior sister. However, this eldest senior sister's level of mystery was not much inferior to his master's, and she was extremely cold. Even though the 5 sisters had cultivated for 100 years, Hua Mingxi had never heard her say anything. She only knew how to cultivate. Originally, Hua Mingxi had planned to invite her eldest senior sister and her 2 junior sisters to visit the Hua family while she was fighting for the position of the young master of the Heavenly Saint Merchant Alliance. Then, the 4 of them discussed whether their eldest senior sister should open the Heaven and Earth Tower and tell their master about Lei Yun and Zhang Jiuji. However, it seemed that her little junior brother could not wait any longer. "Second senior sister, I've been looking for you so hard." Zhang Jiuji had a cold look on his face. He looked up at the void, and his eyes turned cold. That was right. The Zhang Jiuji in front of her was formed by the overlapping shadows. The demonic shadow in the void was Ling Xiao's real body. Although Hua Mingxi could not escape from Ling Xiao in the lower realm with her skills, she was still the young master of the Heavenly Saint Merchant Alliance. However, she was the young master of the Hua family after all. Who knew if she had other tricks up her sleeve? It would be foolproof if she pushed all the blame to Zhang Jiuji. "Why are you looking for me?" Hua Mingxi thought for a while and suddenly smiled. "Little junior brother, do you have something to tell me?" Based on the skills that Zhang Jiuji had displayed, the old general of the Sky Demon behind him was at least at the supreme level. Thus, it was utterly impossible for her to descend to the lower realms. However, the saber intent unleashed by the demonic shadow above his head was truly terrifying. As such, second elders still hadn't returned, so there were some clues. "I do have something to say to second senior sister." Shouldn't senior sister recall that spiritual shadow? Zhang Jiuji raised his head and looked at Ling Xiao, who was retreating in a sorry state. His expression gradually turned cold. Hua Mingxi's eyes flashed with a hint of contemplation, But in the end, she did not withdraw her spirit image as Zhang Jiuji had instructed. This talisman could only be used once. Once she took back her ancestors' spiritual sense, she would completely lose her support and become a fish waiting to be slaughtered. Haha. Junior brother, feel free to speak your mind. Senior sister, have you forgotten so quickly how you colluded with young Master Ling people to frame me? Zhang Jiuji's expression was gloomy. At this moment, Ling Zhao's eyes also flickered with a cold glint. With his strength, he could easily crush an ordinary saint stage expert. However, this spiritual shadow had obviously surpassed the saint level. Even though it had suppressed its cultivation, its supreme aura was still magnificent and terrifying. Therefore, he only used the power of his polychoria to deal with it carefully and did not use his true strength. The longer a spiritual shadow existed, the more energy it would consume, and it could not be recovered. Ling Xiao only needed to delay it for a moment to exhaust it to death. There was no need for him to risk his life. Haha, junior brother, you're wrong. The one who wanted to kill you was young Master Ling Xiao of the Ling people. I had no choice. How about this? Hua Mingxi narrowed her eyes and suddenly smiled. I'll tell junior brother Ling Zhao's whereabouts, and you can seek revenge on him. How about that? Humph. Hua Mingxi, you're really extremely sinister. Zhang Jiuji snorted coldly and suddenly stepped forward. Streams of demonic qi containing holy will surged out and enveloped heaven and earth, pressing down on Hua Mingxi's head. Saint level? How is that possible? Hua Mingxi's face changed drastically. Just as she was about to dodge, the void behind her suddenly rippled. As for Ling Xiao, who was originally trapped by the spirit shadow, he actually strangely appeared behind her and then chopped down with his blade. No! Hua Mingxi's face was filled with horror. She suddenly reached out her hand. A golden decree appeared in heaven and earth. On it were mountains, seas, and stars, containing infinite power. This decree was Hua Mingxi's life-saving sacred weapon and also the Hua family's heirloom. It had the power to seal the heavens. Vast golden light shot up into the sky and covered heaven and earth. Vaguely, millions of stars appeared in the sky and formed a divine array, enveloping Ling Xiao. In just one breath, the yin and yang of heaven and earth were destroyed. The universe was reversed and the stars dimmed. It was as if all living things would be suppressed and imprisoned by the divine decree. Caging heaven, in the entire universe, this sacred weapon was famous. Even if a supreme being expert fell into it, he or she would not be able to break free. Hua Mingxi's face was cold. With a thought, the spiritual shadow that stood in the void suddenly descended from the sky and pounced on Zhang Jiuji behind her. This bastard's strength really made her heart palpitate. In just over a year, he had broken through to the saint level. If he was given more time to grow, even eldest senior sister would not be able to defeat him. Kill, Hua Mingxi said indifferently. But in the next moment, her face suddenly froze. At this moment, she saw a ray of black light flickering in the endless golden light. Then, a demonic shadow suddenly walked out slowly from the divine array. It was light and gentle, and its whole body was surrounded by a vast aura of nothingness. How is that possible? Hua Mingxi's lips trembled. She could only feel an endless chill rising from the bottom of her feet. How is that possible? Logically speaking, in the lower realm, no one should be able to break the power of her divine decree. However, the demonic shadow in front of her seemed to have easily torn apart the layers of array and descended from the sky. It was like a deity, which brought great shock to Hua Mingxi. Who are you? Buzz. However, this time, Ling Xiao did not give her any chance to delay. He slashed out with the demonic blade in his hand and directly covered Hua Mingxi's body. Eldest senior sister, little junior brother is a demon. Quickly report to master. At this critical moment, Hua Mingxi suddenly crushed a green spiritual jade in her hand. A wisp of soul consciousness floated out and disappeared. Ling Zhao's eyes narrowed. Without any hesitation, he tore her body apart. Buzz! At the same time, Hua Mingxi's divine soul was sucked in by a divine power and appeared in a dark and strange soul sea. At this moment, the young mistress of the Hua family was still confused. Whether it was Zhang Jiuji's cultivation or the means of the demonic shadow, just now, she found it extremely unbelievable. Moreover, she had a vague feeling that the demonic shadow's figure and eyes were somewhat familiar. Chapter 1448. Buzz. Footsteps could be heard from the end of her soul sea. Hua Mingxi was stunned. She looked up in the direction of the sound. However, she saw a figure shrouded in demonic fog slowly walking over. Soon, he appeared in front of her. Who are you? At this moment, Hua Mingxi was no longer as terrified as before. Now that her physical body was destroyed and her soul was trapped, she would not be able to escape death today. She just wanted to see who the demon in front of her was. Why did she feel that he was familiar? I promised you that I would help you find Lei Yin. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. The demonic fog around him dissipated, revealing his gentle and handsome face. I have found her. I will send you to see her now. Ling Xiao. Hua Mingxi's eyes widened. Her face was distorted by fear. Suddenly, she seemed to understand many things, but also she did not understand anything. She really couldn't understand why the Ling clan's young master in front of her would deliberately scheme against them. At this point, Hua Mingxi had already guessed that Lei Yin most likely died in Ling Zhao's hands. That meant that Zhang Jiuji was framed. But why did he do all this? What benefits could he get by killing her? Inexplicably, Hua Mingxi was a little lost. Originally, she thought that she and Ling Xiao were using each other. As long as she was still valuable, he would not show any hostility to her. Why? Buzz. However, Hua Mingxi did not have the chance to figure it out. She heard a buzzing sound. Ling Xiao waved his hand and devoured her soul completely. Beep. Congratulations to the host for successfully killing the Lady of Destiny. You have gained 2,000 luck points and 20,000 villain points. Beep. Congratulations to the host for successfully killing the Lady of Destiny. You have gained an additional reward. Luck Plundering Talisman. Beep. Congratulations to the host for successfully killing the Lady of Destiny. You have gained an additional reward. Destiny Forging Points 1%, total 65%. Hearing the system notification, Ling Zhao's face did not change in the slightest, but the corners of his mouth curled up into a sinister smile. From Hua Mingxi's soul memories, he had learned many secrets about the Heaven and Earth Imperial Palace. Just as he had expected, Zhang Jiuji's remaining 3 senior sisters were also famous figures in the Azure Sky world. This was especially true of their eldest sister, whose background was even more incredible. She was in the echelon and was one of the top figures in the current generation. According to what Hua Mingxi knew, the secret key to opening Tian DK was with this senior sister. As for the other 2 people, they surprised Ling Xiao. They were actually from the same ancient clan. Interesting. Ling Xiao smiled, and his figure instantly disappeared from where he stood. At the same time, in the center of the azure sky, he saw a divine mountain towering in the clouds. It was majestic and ancient. There seemed to be celestial music permeating the air, and there were many divine shadows. It was like an otherworldly place, like an immortal palace in the 9 heavens, and it was filled with endless Tao. On the peak of the mountain, a woman in gray clothes and long hair that flowed down like a waterfall stood with her hands behind her back, and she gazed into the distance. The woman was extremely beautiful. Her skin was like jade, white and delicate. Between her brows, there was an elegant and cold temperament. She was otherworldly, and one would find her breathtaking at first glance, but one would not dare to profane her. She was like a goddess from the 9 heavens, and she was different from all living beings. Her eyes were filled with a piercingly cold intent that could shake one's soul. She was high and mighty. At this moment, she was gazing into the distance, and she seemed to be worried. There was a trace of worry between her brows, which made her look even more delicate. It was as if, under this iceberg-like face, she was no more than an ordinary woman. She was sad, happy, timid, and fearful. Eldest sister, Master is calling for you. The gray-clothed woman only turned around when a shout sounded from behind her. She looked at the white-clothed young lady who was walking towards her with a blank expression in her eyes. Seeing this, a bitter smile appeared on the white-clothed girl's face. She actually repeated what she had just said. Eldest senior sister, Master is calling for you. The woman in gray immediately nodded. She was gentle and respectful, and there was not a trace of arrogance in her tone. Eldest sister, there's no need to be courteous with me. Quickly go. The martial uncles have gone over as well. The young woman in white chuckled and held the woman in gray's arm. The two of them headed towards the magnificent palace on the mountain. At this moment in the lower realm, a dragon chariot swept across the void, heading toward Feng State at an extremely fast speed. The figure of the young man on the dragon carriage suddenly disappeared, and before Yi Qingchuan and the other two girls could react, he reappeared on the carriage. Young master, Yi Qingchuan raised her brows slightly, and a smile spread on the corners of her mouth. At this moment, she could clearly sense that the young master before her was the real young master. Although the aura from before was the young master's, it wasn't the real young master. It was like a type of intuition. It was a very strange feeling. Young master, wouldn't Hua Mingxi disrupt our plans by bringing Su Yu up to the upper realm? Su Yin frowned slightly, and killing intent was hidden in her eyes. It's fine. But at this moment, Ling Xiao just shook his head and said calmly, they can't go to Qing Song. Young master, you mean? Su Yan's eyes narrowed. She already had a guess in her heart, and a bright smile bloomed on her face. But on second thought, she was a little puzzled. Young master spent so much effort to set up this trap, just to make use of Hua Mingxi to bring her into the Sky Sacred Business Alliance. But if Hua Mingxi couldn't return to Qing Song, then, don't worry, I'll take care of everything. Ling Xiao smiled, and Su Yin heaved a sigh of relief. Her eyes were cold as she said, Young master, I think the Su family can't stay. Huh? Hearing that, Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows, and the smile on his face deepened. Yin'er has matured. Young master, what are you guys talking about? It seems to be very mysterious. At the side, Xinyuan Weiyang had a puzzled expression, and she looked at the three of them with a confused gaze. However, Yi Qingchuan only rubbed her little head and said softly, You little melon, when will you stop being so muddle-headed? A day passed in the blink of an eye. At the center of Feng Prefecture, on majestic ancient mountain. At this moment, there were many people on the mountain, and it was bustling with noise and excitement. But if one took a closer look, one would see a handsome young man in white standing with his hands behind his back. Beside him stood a young lady in luxurious clothes. Both of them looked calm as they faced hundreds of cultivators. Lin Yin, I didn't expect you to come to my immortal form sect. In front of the crowd, a young man in black snorted, and a hint of mockery flashed in his eyes. Oomph. Lin Wuji, to think that I treated you as an elder brother. How dare you team up with Hua Fei to harm me? The white-robed Ling Yin gritted his teeth, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. Bastard, who do you think you are? How dare a bastard like you covet Saintess Fei? Saintess Fei is already merciful for not killing you. I didn't expect you to be so unrepentant. Lin Wuji snorted coldly, and his expression became even more disdainful. Chapter 1449. You're slandering me? Lin Yin took a deep breath and removed his white robe. Screams erupted from the crowd. Shameless. What is Lin Yin doing? Puffed. She actually took off her clothes in broad daylight. She is indeed a dissolute person. No wonder junior sister Hua and senior brother Wuji chased him out of the sect. How shameless. However, as Lin Yin removed his white robe and revealed his muscular body, the mocking voices of the crowd gradually died down. At this moment, a hideous and terrifying scar appeared on his lower abdomen. Even though the scar had already healed, it still gave people a ghastly feeling. This is Lin Wuji. You and Hua Fei worked together to deceive me. You drugged me and stole my fire spirit bloodline. I'm here today to avenge you. Get that person to come out. Lin Yin gritted his teeth as he glared at Lin Wuji. When he joined the Immortal Form sect with Lin Wuji, they were supposed to support each other and rule the Lin clan together. However, Lin Wuji was jealous that he had awakened his fire spirit bloodline and was extremely talented. Lin Wuji had colluded with the Holy Maiden of the Immortal Form sect to scheme against him. Initially, Lin Yin thought that Hua Fei Er's feelings for him were genuine. However, he was drugged by the woman he loved the most and lost consciousness the moment he awakened his fire spirit bloodline. After that, Lin Wuji and Hua Fei worked together to steal his fire spirit bloodline and strip him of his clothes. They accused him of having designs on the Holy Maiden and chased him out of the Immortal Form sect. Since Lin Wuji and Lin Yin were from the same clan, no one doubted Lin Wuji's accusation. In Lin Wuji's eyes, what trouble could a bastard cause? Lin Wuji would just kill him. However, Hua Fei felt guilty and compassionate, so she spared his life. Who would have thought? After 3 years, the shameless bastard who had been chased out of the sect had reappeared in front of everyone. Furthermore, from the looks of it, he seemed to be rather confident. Lin Yin, don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Lin Wuji's eyes were cold, but there was a faint uneasiness in his heart. When Lin Yin was chased out of the sect, he used his status as the young master of the Lin family to banish Lin Yin and his family to a remote mountain city in Peng Prefecture, cutting off their supply of elixirs and spiritual materials. In Lin Wuji's opinion, without the protection of the Lin clan and being expelled from the Immortal Form sect, Lin Yan's fate would only be extremely miserable. Could it be that he had some other fortuitous encounter in these 3 years? Of course, no matter what kind of fortuitous encounter he had, the Immortal Form sect was an existence that stood at the apex of Feng Province. Even the Lin family could not be compared to this immortal sect. The reason for that was because it was said that the ancestor of that sect was someone from the upper realm. His origin was quite grand. Since Lin Yin dared to come to his doorstep today, Lin Wuji would naturally not let him off. Brother Lin Yin, why are you talking nonsense with them? Ask Xian Yi to kill them all. Beside Lin Yin, the well-dressed young lady snorted coldly. Her eyes flickered with a strange blood-red color. From her appearance, she did not look very old. Moreover, she called Lin Yin brother. However, there was an inexplicable sense of vicissitudes in her eyes. No, Xian Yi this time. I want to end this grudge personally. Lin Yin shook his head stubbornly. At this moment, he fully displayed the character of a chosen one. Clearly, there is someone behind me who can easily settle everything. Sai, I don't need that. I want to do it myself. Otherwise, how can I enjoy acting tough? The greatest joy in this world was to personally crush those who had framed and harmed you under your feet. Of course, Lin Yin was extremely grateful to Yu Xuanyi. Back when he was a cripple and was ridiculed by others, it was this younger sister who had been adopted by his father since young who carefully took care of him, protected him, and accompanied him through storms to rise again. Moreover, Lin Yin did not know if it was an illusion, but he always felt that Yu Xuanyi's strength was unfathomable. A year ago, when the world of souls was recovering, Yu Xuanyi left the Lin family for a period of time. When she returned, she brought with her many spiritual materials and treasures. One of the treasures even helped him recover from all his injuries and awaken an even more terrifying bloodline divine physique. In Lin Yan's heart, although Yu Xuanyi was his younger sister, she was also his greatest benefactor. Unknowingly, there was a trace of affection between the two of them that surpassed that of siblings. However, now that the 9 states was in turmoil and immortal opportunity had appeared, the two of them tacitly suppressed their feelings and worked hard to cultivate. Even so, Lin Yin once swore on his Tao heart that when he stood at the top of the world, he would give Yu Xuanyi a grand wedding. In this life, I will not let my beloved down. Today, Lin Yin was originally worried about climbing the mountain. Moreover, Yu Xuanyi had personally told him that there was no need to fear anyone. Therefore, he came. You don't know what's good for you. Lin Yin, Let me see how much you've improved in these 3 years. Hearing Yu Xuanyi's arrogant words, Lin Wuji felt even more uneasy. However, in the entire 9 states, the only ones who had the strength to destroy the immortal form sect were the young masters of the upper world. He knew Yu Xuanyi's identity. She was the abandoned daughter of Lin Yan's father. How could she be a match for the immortal form sect? Oomph. Then I'll kill you first. Then I'll kill Hua Fei. Lin Yan nodded slightly, showing no signs of fear. He took a step forward and appeared in front of Lin Wuji in an instant. Then he punched out. Arrogant. Lin Wuji's eyes flickered. Spiritual light danced around his body. An exalted realm aura swept out, enveloping heaven and earth and causing the void to crack. His cultivation had already entered the exalted realm during the spiritual Qi revival. Now, he had broken through to the 2nd level of the exalted realm. His talent was top-notch even in the 9 states. On the other hand, Lin Yan was only a 5th-level divine emperor when he was crippled. Even if he had a fortuitous encounter in the past 3 years, there was no way he could compete with Lin Wuji. Thinking of this, Lin Wuji clenched his fist and met Lin Yan's fist. Boom! The moment the two attacks collided, a vast divine aura swept across the entire square. Terrifying spiritual energy ripples spread out and sent the surrounding people flying several feet away. Countless cracks appeared on the bluestone ground beneath their feet. However, to everyone's horror, the scene of Lin Yan vomiting blood and being sent flying did not happen. On the other hand, Lin Wuji's expression changed. He staggered a few steps back before stopping his tracks. His outstretched arm was now hanging limply by his side. Even the aura on his body seemed to have withered for a short period of time. How is this possible? Seen your brother Wuji lost? Lin Wuji, is this all you've got? Lin Yan stood tall and straight with a calm expression on his face. His cultivation level was indeed lower than Lin Wuji's. He was only a 1st-level exalted realm cultivator. However, his physical body and bloodline were not something that could be defeated by people of the same cultivation level as him. Therefore, the bones in Lin Wuji's arm were completely shattered by the punch. 30 years in the east, 30 years in the west. Today I, Lin Yan, have reached the west of the river. You, Lin Wuji raised his head and looked at the young man who was slowly walking toward him. A trace of fear finally appeared in his eyes. Now, it's time for you to repent. Lin Yan no longer hesitated. He charged forward and punched out again. Buzz! However, at this moment, a buzzing sound suddenly rang out from the back mountain of the Immortal Form sect. A graceful figure dressed in golden robes flew over at an extremely fast speed. She was surrounded by divine light and looked insufferably arrogant. Chapter 1450. It's junior sister Hua. Junior sister Hua has finally come out of seclusion. Cries of surprise could be heard from the mountain peak. Countless disciples of the Immortal Form sect shouted at the top of their lungs. Hua Fei was the daughter of the Immortal Form sect master. She was extremely talented and beautiful. Her status meant that she was destined to be the center of attention in the sect. Moreover, this junior sister Hua was cheerful and gentle. As a result, countless disciples of the Immortal Form sect had a crush on her. Back then, Lin Yan was one of them. He was fortunate enough to be favored by junior sister Hua Fei. Unfortunately, Lin Yan was too eager for quick success and exposed his true nature before he could become junior sister Hua Fei's Dao companion. In the end, not only did he become the first disciple to be expelled from the Immortal Form sect in the past 10,000 years, but his cultivation was also crippled by Lin Wuji, the young master of the Lin clan. Of course, this was only known to the world. Hua Fei Lin Yan stood in the air with his fists clenched. At this moment, there was a clearly complicated look in his eyes. Sadness, anger, and a hint of nostalgia. Once upon a time, Hua Fei was more important to him than Yu Xuanyi. The two of them cultivated together, experienced together, and were inseparable. Even though there were many senior brothers in the sect who were many times more powerful than him, she still chose to be with him without any hesitation. She did not even try to hide it. This feeling of being acknowledged was truly touching. Therefore, Ling Yin could be said to have given his all to Hua Fei. He took good care of this young girl who was older than him, but had a pure temperament. However, Lin Yin would never have dreamed that all of this would happen. It was all a scam concocted by Lin Wuji and Hua Fei. Their goal was the flame's spirit bloodline in his body. This bloodline was one of the top bloodlines in the world of the 9 states. After awakening, one's spiritual energy would evolve into a strange power, the power of flame. Not only did this power have the power to burn everything, but it could also evolve into countless divine abilities. Hua Fei knew of Lin Yan's talent and took the initiative to approach him. She even gave him spiritual materials and pills to help him awaken his bloodline. How despicable! When Lin Yan drank the cup of spirit wine mixed with the incapacitating agent, his Dao heart almost collapsed. He really did not expect that behind all this beauty there was such a despicable plot. When he saw Hua Fei and Lin Wuji standing side by side with ambiguous gazes, his heart turned green. The reason he had returned to the immortal form sect was to crush this adulterous pair beneath his feet and destroy their reputations. Long time no see, Lin Yan. Hua Fei's figure descended from the sky. She didn't even look at Lin Wuji, whose arm had been shattered. In her eyes, be it Lin Yan or Lin Wuji, they were merely stepping stones on her path to immortality. What true feelings! Since they were on this path, they naturally had to work hard to ascend to the heavens. Meeting people. Behind Lin Yan, Yu Xuanyi snorted coldly as if she did not care about the holy maiden of the immortal form sect. Hearing her insults, Hua Fei frowned slightly. She glanced at the former with a gentle gaze, and a miserable smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. Lin Yan, I am so happy to see that you were able to pull yourself together. It seems like you have found a new partner in these 3 years. Suddenly, Lin Yan's heart was in a mess. He didn't know how to express his anger and humiliation. The disappointment on Hua Fei's face made him feel as if he was hallucinating. Could it be that she was forced to do this? Or could it be that she regretted it in the past 3 years? Lin Yan, you must hate me, right? Don't worry, I am standing right here. You can vent your anger. Hua Fei slowly closed her eyes. The surrounding people were stunned, and they felt even more confused. Based on junior sister Fei's attitude, could it be that there was more to what happened back then? Fei, Lin Wuji's eyes darkened. Just as he was about to speak, Hua Fei raised her hand and interrupted him. Senior brother Wuji, you don't have to say anything. I have already made up my mind. What? Lin Yan's eyes narrowed. He stared blankly at the face that was inches away from him. Over the past 3 years, he had imagined her regretful and despairing expression countless times. However, at this moment, he realized that he didn't hate her as much as he thought he did. Brother Lin Yan, what are you waiting for? Quick, kill her. Yu Xuanyi's face was cold. The more she looked at Hua Fei the more she felt that she was a hypocrite. At this moment, she couldn't help but want to kill this woman with one slap. All right, today, I will fulfill your wish. Lin Yan took a deep breath. His face suddenly turned cold. He took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of Hua Fei. He raised his hand and slapped the girl's face. Slap. The slap was crisp and clear, but it didn't have any power. Hua Fei's face instantly swelled up. She looked at Lin Yan with sorrow in her eyes. After the slap, you and I are even. Lin Yan gritted his teeth. His gaze was extremely complicated. However, just as he finished speaking, he saw the young girl in front of him suddenly stretch out a jade-like hand and lightly press it on his chest. Lin Yan's expression froze. At this moment, he was completely caught off guard. His entire body was instantly sent flying by a terrifying wave of heat. He spat out a mouthful of blood. However, compared to the pain on his body, the last ray of light in Lin Yan's heart seemed to have been destroyed. Lin Yan, it has been 3 years. I have always regretted that I did not help you when you made a mistake. That's right, I feel very guilty. I owe you this slap. But, Lin Yan said, you are right. I am sorry. I owe you this slap. But Hua Fei shook her head. Her eyes were cold, and there was no trace of the sorrow from before. You have truly disappointed me. Not only do you not repent, but you also invert the truth and frame me and senior brother Wuji. Lin Yin, do you really think that you can do whatever you want just because you have someone backing you? At this moment, Hua Fei could guess that Lin Yin dared to come to the Immortal Form sect, not only because he had recovered his strength, but also because he had other experts backing him. It was hard not to be wary of Yu Xuanyi's arrogance. However, the Immortal Form sect was one of the most powerful sects in Feng Province. They also had the backing of the upper world. It was not something that any Tom, Dick, or Harry could touch. This slap was enough to cripple Lin Yin. There was no doubt about it. What? I knew it. Junior sister Hua is too sentimental. She is too soft-hearted. That's right. A beast like Lin Yin should be sentenced to death. Junior sister Hua, kill him. Hearing this, the Immortal Form sect disciples finally understood why Junior sister Hua had acted so humbly. It turned out that she had been blaming herself for the past 3 years. How dare you act like a demon when you are about to die? I will kill you. Seeing Lin Yin fall pathetically to the ground with blood splattering everywhere, Yu Xuanyi could no longer suppress the killing intent in her heart. Her eyes suddenly turned red. Chapter 1451. Buzz! Suddenly, a demonic aura was awakened. The vast expanse of sky suddenly turned blood red. Wind and clouds gathered, and lightning fell. At this moment, countless powerful figures walked out of the main hall of the Immortal Form sect. They looked at the square with solemn eyes. This aura, is it from that clan? A middle-aged man in a dark green robe stood in front of the main hall with a solemn expression. That's right. I didn't expect Fei to offend someone from that clan. Sect Master, the elders behind him were also shocked. They had clearly sensed Yu Xuanyi's identity. Let's wait and see. Otherwise, if that clan seeks revenge, our Immortal Form sect can only await destruction. But, Fei, Sect Master, the person above our Immortal Form sect, I'm not sure if that person has descended. However, that clan has been very active recently. It's said that they are involved with an imperishable inheritance in the upper realm. Sai, the Immortal Form sect master sighed. His sect's ancestor had said that the Immortal Form sect had a supreme background in the upper realm. They were called the Taigu Ling people. However, the Immortal Form sect master did not know exactly how supreme they were. After all, it had been too long. With their knowledge, they did not know about the changes in the upper realm. Moreover, in the eyes of those from the lower realm, there should not be too much of a difference between the two imperishable inheritances. They were like frogs at the bottom of a well. No matter how strong an ant was, it could only cling to a branch. It was like playing the lute to a cow. At this moment, in the square in front of the main hall, Yu Xuanyi's body was glowing with Dao runes. Her aura had reached the 7th level of the Exalted Realm. Even Lin Wuji, the #1 prodigy of the Immortal Form sect, was only at the 2nd level of the Exalted Realm. However, he was already one of the most outstanding prodigies in the 9 states. It was too terrifying. Where did this Yu Xuanyi come from? How could her cultivation be so terrifying? 7th level of the Exalted Realm. Hua Fei's expression froze. She was clearly shocked. Although she had guessed that this girl's identity was not ordinary, it seemed that she had underestimated her. Oomph! How dare you hurt my brother Lin Yin? Die! Yu Xuanyi snorted coldly and moved towards Hua Fei. However, she was stopped by a palm. Yu Xuanyi frowned. When she turned around, she saw that Lin Yin had already stood up and was standing behind her. Brother Lin Yin, I'll do it. Lin Yin wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. The confusion and hesitation in his eyes had long disappeared. There was even a hint of killing intent flickering in his eyes. That's right. You should have thought of it earlier. With this woman's viciousness, how could she regret and blame herself? One betrayal was enough, and he had almost fallen into her trap again. If it wasn't for the fact that he had awakened a new talent, that palm strike would have been enough to cripple his cultivation. Hua Fei, you're right. With this palm strike, our relationship is severed. Lin Yin took a deep breath and pulled Yuxuani behind him. Come, let me see how strong you've become after fusing with my flame spirit bloodline. Lin Yin, if you leave now, we can forget about our previous grievances. Hua Fei's eyes were solemn. She felt uneasy. Both Yuxuani and Lin Yin gave her a strong sense of oppression. The two of them probably had the strength to crush him. I've said it before. Today, you will pay the price. Lin Yin shook his head and clenched his fist. Streaks of crimson, spiritual energy gathered and surged with power. Flame energy. Hua Fei's eyes trembled. She finally understood why Lin Yin dared to return to the immortal form sect. He had awakened the flame spirit bloodline again. Since you're so stubborn, Hua Fei nodded. Before she could finish her sentence, she stretched out her hand. Streaks of crimson spiritual light flashed in the sky and turned into sharp blades that shot towards Lin Yin. Buzz! The world buzzed. Everyone could only see streaks of light flashing by. The heat contained within the streaks of light made even Lin Wuji tremble. However, just as the streaks of light were about to land on Lin Yan's body, a crimson light suddenly surrounded the young man. In just a short moment, his body was shrouded by the crimson light and his appearance could not be seen clearly. When the streaks of light landed on him, only a series of ear-piercing clangs could be heard. Clang, clang, clang. Hearing the voice, a wisp of surprise appeared on everyone's faces. Hua Fei took a few steps back, cautiously, and looked coldly at the area where the crimson light was. Soon, when the endless brilliance dissipated, a figure covered in crimson, mysterious crystals stepped out. The crystal armor was smooth and transparent. It was the toughest defense in the world. It was impossible to break through. This is Hua Fei was stunned. The flame spirit bloodline was indeed terrifying, but it was only limited to spiritual energy. However, Lin Yin had turned his flame energy into a divine armor. This was beyond Hua Fei's understanding. Actually, I should thank you. Lin Yin stepped forward and walked towards Hua Fei, step by step. If you had not taken away my bloodline, I would not have been able to awaken this flame spirit battle body. Flame spirit battle body. Hua Fei's pupils shrank, and she finally felt a trace of fear. She clenched her fist, and a golden ancient sword appeared in her hand. Then, she slashed at Lin Yin furiously. Buzz! A sword radiance that was 100 feet long appeared in the sky. The sword essence contained in it was enough to shatter heaven and earth. However, in the face of such a terrifying sword aura, Lin Yan's face was expressionless. He allowed the sword radiance to fall from the sky and land on his shoulder. Clang! A loud sound was heard. Hua Fei was stunned when she saw that the sword that she had used all her strength could not break through Lin Yan's defense. It only left a faint white mark on his shoulder. How is this possible? Hua Fei panicked and her face turned pale. At this moment, Lin Yin did not say anything else. The moment he stepped out, he appeared in front of Hua Fei. Wuji, save me. At this moment of life and death, Hua Fei finally let go of her dignity and screamed. Lin Wuji gritted his teeth and unleashed his honorable realm aura. But, just as he took a step forward, the space in front of him suddenly rippled for a moment. Then, Yuxuani descended from the sky and slammed her palm down on Lin Wuji's head. Lin Wuji's eyes narrowed, and he raised his hand in a panic to block it. However, the moment the two palms collided, Lin Wuji's face froze. His only remaining arm, along with half of his body, was shattered by Yuxuani's palm. Chapter 1452. Puchi. The entire immortal form sect fell into a dead silence when they saw the bloodied figure on the ground. Everyone's face was filled with shock and horror, especially the petite figure who stood in the air with her arms crossed in front of her chest. She gave off an inexplicable feeling of shock. On the surface, Yuxuani looked like a naive young girl. She even looked a little innocent. However, compared to Lin Yin, she was even more ruthless and merciless. I'll kill anyone who dares to hurt my big brother Lin Yin. Yu Xuanyi snorted coldly. Suddenly, she swung her palm and smashed the struggling Lin Wuji into a pile of minced meat. Gulp! At this moment, even the elders of the Immortal Form sect were horrified, let alone the disciples of the Immortal Form sect. The number one prodigy of the Immortal Form sect, the famous monstrous talent of the Feng Prefecture, and the young master of the Lin clan, was killed by this young girl in 2 moves. Lin Yin, don't tell me you don't remember the happiness we had before. Hua Fei was completely terrified when she saw Lin Wuji's tragic death. At this moment, all her attacks were useless against Lin Yin. This feeling was really despairing. Hua Fei put away your hypocritical face. Lin Yin snorted coldly. He suddenly stretched out his palm and was about to press it down on Hua Fei. However, at this moment, a soft sigh sounded from the great hall in the distance. A figure descended from the sky and stood in front of Lin Yin. That dignified and solemn face was filled with a tinge of melancholy. Yin, enough is enough. Mas. Lin Yin stopped in his tracks. A complicated look appeared on his face. The sect master of the Immortal Form sect was the person he respected the most in his heart. However, when he was framed by Hua Fei, his master remained silent and allowed the two of them to cripple his cultivation and chase him out of the Immortal Form sect. However, the sect master could not ignore the fact that his daughter was being bullied. Hua Sun, you allowed Hua Fei to frame me, and now you're telling me to stop? Lin Yin gritted his teeth. His voice was filled with resentment. In the first place, there should be no interference from the elders in a fight between peers. Not to mention, he had one fair and square today. The Immortal Form sect was known as the #1 orthodox sect in Feng Province. Could it be that they were going to become the laughingstock of the 9 provinces? Lin Yin Fei is at fault, but she doesn't deserve to die. How about this? I'll punish her to reflect on her mistakes in seclusion for 100 years. If you want to return to the Immortal Form sect, you can take over the position of holy disciple. The Immortal Form sect master pondered for a moment before suddenly speaking. Brother Lin Yin, you don't have to worry. Do whatever you want. If anyone dares to stop you today, Xian, you will kill them for you. Before Lin Yin could reply, Yu Xuanyi had already walked to his side and said calmly, You, little girl, you should be from the blood feather race, right? You have to know that your actions today will very likely lead to the punitive expedition of the 2 major forces. Have you really thought this through? The Immortal Form sect master frowned. The 9 prefectures had always had a common understanding. Although the 3 great sinner clans were suppressed here by the Realm Lord, and all the experts in their clans were dead. Even so, the 3 clans were still extremely powerful, and ordinary forces could not afford to offend them. Moreover, it was said that the blood feather race had recently become very close to an immortal inheritance from the upper world. Given the Immortal Form sect's foundation, they did not dare to compete with them. Haha, Hua Sun, you think too highly of yourself. At this moment, a sneer was heard from the sky. Following that, a figure in blood-red robes tore through the clouds and appeared behind Yu Xuanyi. It was an old man surrounded by a bloody aura. His holy aura was unparalleled. When he sensed the ripples from Lin Dong's body, a look of horror finally surfaced on the Immortal Form sect master's face. 5th grade true saint. Even the Grand Elder of the Immortal Form sect, who was still alive, was powerless against such a person. What was this girl's status in the blood feather race? Why did she have such an expert protecting her? Kid, kill whoever you want. Even if the Heavenly Emperor comes today, he won't be able to stop you. How can I allow anyone to humiliate the person that the young master of the blood feather race has taken a liking to? The old man in blood-red robes laughed sinisterly. Of course, as one of the 3 divine clans, even if the blood feather race did not have a foundation, how could these ants from the lower world compare to them? One had to know that the 3 clans were suppressed by the Realm Lord Palace. One could imagine how powerful they were. 3rd Grandpa, What are you talking about? Hearing that, Yushwani's face turned red. Her eyes were filled with shyness. On the other hand, Lin Yin and Hua Fei'er were stunned. Young lord of the blood feather race, especially Hua Fei'er, her eyes flickered with a wisp of dense shock. She did not expect that a human youth that she did not want would be favored by the young lord of the blood feather race, one of the three divine clans. Could it be that Lin Yin was especially strong in certain aspects? Slap! Slap! This slap to the face was even more painful than before. Young lord of the blood feather race? Xuani? Lin Yin was also shocked and looked at Yushwani in disbelief. Brother Lin Yin, don't worry. I will always be yours. Yushwani smiled and said calmly. Such a straightforward confession caused the hearts of the Immortal Form sect disciples to tremble. Lin Yin was really King lucky. Wherever he went, he would be favored by a girl. Kid, kill her. Don't disappoint my little Xuani. The blood-red robed elder's voice was hoarse, and there was a hint of threat in his tone. After all, if Lin Yin did not kill Hua Fei'er today, he might still have feelings for her. Killing her would be the true end of the relationship. Phew. Lin Yin was silent for a moment before he said in a deep voice, Back then, you dug out my bloodline and destroyed my cultivation, but you spare my life. Today, I will destroy your cultivation as well. Lin Yin, how dare you? Hua Fei'er screamed in despair. Destroying her cultivation was more painful than killing her. Father, let alone your father, even the patriarch of the Immortal Form sect won't be able to save you today. The blood-red robed elder smiled disdainfully. Blood runes appeared in his eyes, and a shocking power of blood surged out, intimidating the entire Immortal Form sect. Blood Feather Tribe. My Immortal Form sect is protected by the Ling people of the Upper Realm. Do you really want to become enemies with my sect? The Immortal Form sect master clenched his fists. He could only place his hopes on the Upper Realm to scare the three of them away. Ling people of the Upper Realm? Hua Sun, you're bragging too much. Even if the young master of the Ling people is here, do you think he will offend the Blood Feather Tribe for a small Immortal Form sect? The blood-red robed elder laughed. But, just as he finished speaking, he felt a chill in his heart. The originally clear sky suddenly fell into darkness. In the vast sky, the sound of a sword resonated with an unparalleled killing intent. Suddenly, the void shattered and all Daos disappeared. A low and icy cold voice boomed across the entire Immortal Form sect. How dare you humiliate my tribe? The Blood Feather Tribe shall be slaughtered. Chapter 1453. The sound of swords reverberated between heaven and earth, shaking the heavens. The blood-robed elder's face turned pale instantly. He raised his head to look at the void and felt beams of dazzling golden light falling down, almost blinding him. Then, an indescribably terrifying sword aura descended from the sky, as if it was about to shatter the heavens. Oh no! The blood-robed elder roared and leaped into the sky. Instead of dodging, he took the initiative to meet the sword aura. He could feel that if the sword aura fell, Yushwani and Lin Yin would most likely die, even if he could barely survive. Guardians were supposed to protect the Tao in the face of death. It was their duty and responsibility. Xuani run, the blood-robed elder roared. He had yet to see the person who attacked. However, the sword aura had clearly transcended the shackles of the heavenly Tao. Its power could shake an immortal god. Third Grandpa. Yushwani's expression changed drastically. She looked up blankly, only to see swords falling from the sky like a torrent. Moreover, each of the ancient swords was surrounded by endless holy will. How was this possible? Who could be so powerful? The Blood Feather Tribe was the most powerful tribe in the 9 states. However, even the Blood Feather Tribe, which used to be the Azure Sky Tribe, only had 3 holy artifacts. The rest had been destroyed by the Realm Lord. And now, the ancient swords that filled the sky were all holy artifacts. More importantly, An ordinary Saint Stage powerhouse could easily wield a Saint artifact. However, using two holy artifacts at the same time would exhaust their spiritual energy. But now, ridiculous. This was an immortal miracle. Plop. The sound of people kneeling and kowtowing could be heard from the peak of the mountain. Both the disciples of the immortal sect and the sect master of the immortal sect were shocked. Moreover, any one of the 100 swords seemed to have the power to kill a saint. The sword aura was like mist from the depths of the primordial chaos. It was impossible to break free from it, and it was impossible to resist. At the very least, this sword aura was enough to become a god in the 9 states. Around the blood-robed elder, a bloody radiance erupted. On his back, a pair of blood-red feathers spread out, covering thousands of miles. Every single feather was filled with a vast amount of blood-red chi. Then, the moment the blood feather flapped, blood-red ripples appeared in the air and surged toward the 100 swords like waves. Rumble. The moment the two attacks collided, the entire void was annihilated by the spiritual might. The blood-robed old man was worthy of being a member of the Bloodfeather clan. He was actually able to resist the suppression of dozens of sword intents by himself. However, moments later, when the last 10 ancient swords slashed down from the sky, they directly pierced through all the blood patterns in the sky. With unparalleled dominance, they wiped out all the blood in the world. No, impossible. The blood-robed elder's eyes widened, and there was only endless fear left in his heart. I am the 3rd elder of the Blood Feather race. Yu Huatian, you dare to kill me? Blood Feather race. Demon King Palace. Pucci. Before the blood-robed old man could finish speaking, his body was pierced by the dozens of swords. There was not a single part of him that was left unscathed from head to toe. Even his divine soul was cut into pieces by the torrential sword aura. Gulp. The world fell silent. The entire Immortal Form sect was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. At this moment, whether it was Lin Yin, Yu Xuani, or the Immortal Form sect master, their faces were filled with shock and fear. A 5th-grade sage who stood at the peak of the 9 states was slashed into nothingness by a single attack. How terrifying. Let's go. Yu Xuani's eyes were solemn. She did not dare to linger for a moment. She immediately grabbed Lin Yan's hand, and the blood feather appeared behind her. The aura of a 7th-grade venerable was undoubtedly revealed. However, just as she took a step forward and was about to leave this place, a series of strange sounds came from all around the mountain peak. Kacha-kacha. Hearing the sound, everyone was stunned again. When they turned around, they saw that the space within 100 miles was covered by endless ice crystals. It was like a crystal prison that sealed everything and suppressed everything. Yu Xuani's face changed drastically. At this moment, she felt that the spiritual power and bloodline in her body were showing signs of being frozen by the ice. Right at this moment, a palm print suddenly descended from the sky. An ancient and boundless aura was quietly awakened. The palm print seemed to be filled with thousands of divine runes. Every trace and every strand contained an unparalleled, domineering aura that transcended this world. No, Yu Xuani was terrified. She had never felt such fear before. She did not expect that such a terrifying existence would descend upon the Immortal Form sect. Whether it was the sword aura or the palm print, they had surpassed the shackles of the heavenly Tao. In fact, to put it bluntly, the owner of this palm print probably had the power to destroy the world. How is this possible? Who is it? At this moment, Lin Yin, who was beside her, suddenly broke free from her grasp. He turned his head and looked deeply at her before he softly said, "Xin, thank you for accompanying me for the past 3 years. This time, let me block all the calamities for you." Brother Lin Yin. Yu Xuani was slightly taken aback. Just as she was about to reach out and grab his hand, she saw that he had already taken a step forward and charged towards the palm print. Layers of flame crystals covered his body. He was like a glazed war god, emitting a dazzling light. I don't believe that I, Lin Yin, will lose twice in the immortal form sect. Lin Yin roared at the sky. His aura had undergone an earth-shattering change. The flame spirit battle body was the most mysterious body constitution in the world. Even a sage would have a hard time penetrating this flame crystal defense, let alone someone of the same cultivation level. He had already guessed that the person who had descended upon him was a true expert from the upper world. But he was not afraid, because all the trials that could not kill him would only make him stronger. However, the moment Lin Yan's figure came into contact with the palm print, the battle intent on his face froze. Then, everyone saw that the young man who had crushed Hua Fei earlier could not be said to be powerless to retaliate. It could only be said that he did not even have the opportunity to attack. He was directly smashed by the palm print from the sky, smashing the entire bluestone square beneath him into pieces. Dust flew everywhere. The immortal form sect was dead silent. This series of attacks was simply too shocking. Even the immortal form sect master had the misconception that he would be crushed by this palm, let alone an exalted realm cultivator. Peak sage stage? The person who had attacked must be an expert from the upper world, possibly a peak sage stage expert. No, Brother Lin Yin. Yu Xuanyi cried out and was about to rush into the dust. But at this moment, a divine light shot out from the horizon. Then, a figure appeared in the sky. Chapter 1454. At the end of the sky, rays of light shone brightly. A black-clothed figure slowly walked over, looking handsome and spirited. There was a gentle and easygoing smile on her flawless face. Beneath his feet, golden lotuses of the great Tao bloomed. The river of stars stretched for thousands of miles. He's an immortal. Countless disciples of the immortal form sect were dumbfounded. Some of the female disciples even suddenly closed their legs together, and their faces were flushed red. Even Hua Fei and Yu Xuanyi had their mouths slightly agape, their faces filled with shock. It was too perfect. The young man in front of them seemed to have walked out of a dream. His every move was filled with desire. However, before the crowd could recover from their shock, 3 more figures appeared behind the young man. In the next moment, the entire immortal form sect was filled with gasps. With the beauty of Yi Qingchan and the other 2, they would be a disaster even in the Azure continent, let alone in this desolate lower realm. The 3 women walked together, but each of them had their own unique aura. It was too much for the eyes to take in. In fact, many of the immortal sect's prides felt incomparably inferior and ashamed. Perhaps only such a fairy was worthy of that black-clothed young master. But something was wrong. The attacks, just now, all contained enough power to kill a saint. In the immortal form sect master's opinion, those who were capable of unleashing such an attack were most likely elders or guardians of the sect. But no matter how he looked at it, the 4 of them were of the current generation. Didn't that mean their strength is... You, how dare you kill my brother Lin Yin? My blood feather tribe. Yu Xuanyi's lips trembled. She felt a chill rising from the bottom of her feet. However, before she could finish speaking, she saw the green-clothed woman beside the black-clothed youth suddenly frown, and a white hand suddenly stretched out. Yu Xuanyi's expression changed drastically. A pair of blood feathers extended behind her. However, right at this moment, layers of white mist suddenly rose in the surrounding space. A bone-piercing chill spread. The entire world froze at a speed visible to the naked eye. Wherever the cold mist passed, the space became as bright and transparent as ice crystals. But when Yu Xuanyi saw this, the last glimmer of hope in her eyes disappeared. Such strength wasn't something that an exalt realm expert like her could resist at all. Furthermore, there was simply no way to break free. In the blink of an eye, Yu Xuanyi's body was enveloped by the cold mist and froze. Then, when Yi Qingchan's jade-like hand pressed down, she shattered into pieces. Gulp! The immortal form sect master and the other disciples swallowed their saliva when they saw this. Too ruthless. He was the young master of the Blood Feather clan, one of the 3 god clans in the 9 regions. It was actually shattered by a single slap. One had to know that these three god clans were clans that had once contended against the Sector Lord. Even though the powerhouses of the three clans and their foundations had been completely destroyed, the most noble bloodline of the upper realm still flowed in their bodies. Back when the Sage Emperor had unified the 9 states, he had been extremely respectful to the three god clans. There were even rumors that behind the Sage Emperor was the most mysterious of the 3 races, the Black Demon race. Cough, cough. At this moment, a coughing sound came from where the dust had dispersed. Ling Xiao wasn't surprised at all when he heard the sound. On the other hand, Yi Qingchuan, Wei Yang, and Su Yan's eyes flickered with a trace of disbelief. With the young master's strength, even a first-level Saint Realm expert would have been shattered into pieces, let alone a first-level exalt. Could it be that Ling Yan had been hiding his strength? Finally, when the dust settled, a figure appeared in front of everyone's eyes. At this moment, the flame crystal outside Ling Yan's body had completely shattered. There were countless cracks all over it, and it was a shocking sight. Along with it, his invincible Tao heart and bones were also shattered. However, with his strength, there was no way he could withstand the might of Ling Xiao's palm. It was obvious that he was hiding other secrets. Xuani, Ling Yan struggled to get up from the ground. He looked around blankly, but he didn't see Yu Xuani's figure. A trace of disappointment flashed across his heart. Let me see how many more of my palms you can take. Ling Xiao smiled and swung his palm again. An ear-piercing, buzzing sound spread for thousands of miles, and a sky-covering palm print appeared again. The stronger Ling Yan was, the more shocking his secret was, and the happier Ling Xiao would be. Damn it! Looking at the palm falling from the sky, Ling Yan gritted his teeth, and a trace of determination appeared in his eyes. Above his head, a bronze fragment appeared. There were thousands of divine runes on it, and it contained great mysteries. The moment Ling Xiao's palm landed, a strand of immortal intent suddenly spread out from the bronze fragment. It turned into a celestial shadow and covered Ling Yan's body. Tens of thousands of rays of light shot into the sky, and an ancient diagram appeared in the celestial shadow's eyes. Clang! However, even though the immortal shadow was filled with boundless divine might, it had a boundless and ancient aura. The moment Ling Xiao's palm landed, the light dimmed, and it turned back into a bronze fragment. Pucci! Ling Yan staggered and knelt on the ground. Blood spurted out of his mouth, and his aura was extremely weak. Is there really no other way? He lowered his head and trembled. He held a white spiritual jade in his hand, and finally, he crushed it. Buzz! Instantly, a strand of divine soul fluctuations surged out and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows, and the smile on his face widened. It seemed that the secret of the Son of Providence lay in the bronze fragment. The immortal contained within the fragment was indeed a little shocking. It was obvious that the fragment had a history. According to Ling Xiao's guess, the only thing in the lower realm that was related to immortals was the relic of the sinful celestial that Su Qingshan had mentioned. As for the strand of divine soul that Ling Yan had used, Ling Xiao had sensed it long ago, but he did not stop it. In the land of the 9 states, the most powerful people were only in the sage state, so he did not have to worry as much as Qing Song. No matter who Lin Yin was asking for help from, the only outcome was death. Moreover, it would save Ling Xiao a lot of trouble if Ling Yin lured the enemy over. With that thought, Ling Xiao smiled. He descended from the sky, and divine runes circled around his palms. The aura of the world destroyer Tao Law destroyed the immortal opportunity on the fragment. Then he held it in his hand. Buzz! As the fragment was in his hand, Ling Xiao felt a surge of energy similar to the origin of immortals surging toward him, and a celestial palace seemed to appear in front of him. At the end of the celestial palace, a figure stood with his hands behind his back. He was so ethereal that he looked like a dream. There seemed to be a force guiding him in a certain direction. Chapter 1455. The Immortal Graveyard. Ling Zhao's eyes glinted. He seemed to have guessed something. If this bronze shard was the key to finding the Immortal Graveyard, did that mean that he would be able to open the Immortal Graveyard and obtain the fortune within? Anyone who could obtain the bronze shard would definitely be someone with great fortune. In other words, the key to opening the Immortal Graveyard was a group of people with great fortune killing each other. The one who survived would become the true child of destiny of this world. Interesting. Ling Xiao was looking forward to finding out what the bronze shard was made of. A mere shard was able to resist his attack when used by a first-rank Exalted Realm cultivator. What kind of power would it be if he could gather all the shards? This, young master, may I ask? The Immortal Form Sect Master and the others gathered around Ling Xiao, their faces filled with respect and fear. Hua Fe, in particular, had a look of gratitude on her face. If not for Ling Zhao's appearance, she would have ended up in a pitiful state. However, if this young master knew what she had done, would he punish her? Ling people, Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao said indifferently and looked down at Ling Yan. Find a pillar and tie him up. Yu Xuani's fortune wasn't high, but it was still at least 1,000. Although he was killed by Yi Qingshan, Ling Xiao was pleasantly surprised to find that the fortune was also attributed to him. In other words, if these people with great fortune killed the child of destiny, Ling Xiao would also be rewarded. If Ling Yin could rely on him at the brink of death, he definitely wouldn't be a good-for-nothing. It was very likely that he was also a person with great fortune. Of course, waiting for someone to show up was the most comfortable thing to do. After all, those who had a bit of luck were mostly arrogant, conceited, and upright people. They would never leave their friends in the lurch. Otherwise, it would be wrong. Ling people, young master is here. Our Immortal Form Sect is going to prosper. The Immortal Form Sect Master and the others narrowed their eyes as their faces turned slightly red from excitement. Even though they didn't know what the words Ling people meant, they didn't know. However, according to the will of their ancestors, the Immortal Form Sect was the slaves of the Ling people, and they swore loyalty to them to the death. Of course, no matter what status the Ling people had now, they were still a force from the upper realm. A mere Bloodfeather clan was not worth mentioning. Young master, it's all my fault. Everything that happened today was caused by Fei Er. I have spoiled young master's mood. Hua Fei Er pursed her red lips tightly. At this time, she did not dare to covet Ling Xiao in the slightest. She was very scheming and would do anything to go further on the path of immortality. However, this did not mean that she did not know her own limits. Compared to Yi Qingshan and the other two girls, her looks and talent were too mediocre. Don't worry, you did well. Ling Xiao smiled inexplicably and walked toward the main hall. Behind him, Hua Fei Er's pretty face froze. She was clearly at a loss. Did well? Young master, are you serious? In the main hall of the Immortal Form Sect, Ling Xiao sat on the main seat and looked at the people below him with a gentle expression. Young master, do you want me to lead the Immortal Form Sect and trample the Lin family to the ground? In the main hall, the Immortal Form Sect Master's face was cold and arrogant. The Bloodfeather clan was not to be trifled with, even if they were beaten to death. After all, the Bloodfeather clan had several saints, and each of them had terrifying battle strength. Even if Lord Ling Xiao was outstanding, the Immortal Form Sect would most likely become cannon fodder if they became enemies with the Bloodfeather clan. However, wouldn't the Lin family of Peng Prefecture be easily destroyed? No need. Ling Xiao shook his head. Based on Lin Yan's appearance, he did not have a good relationship with the Lin family. Not to mention, Lin Wuji was killed by Yu Xuani. Therefore, the Lin family would only be grateful to Ling Xiao for killing Lin Yan. They would not complain at all. The ancestral land of the Bloodfeather clan should be in the central Ning Prefecture, right? Yes. Young master, the Bloodfeather clan is one of the 3 major god clans. They have a deep foundation, and they occupy one of the most prosperous prefectures in the 9 prefectures, Ning Prefecture. They have a longer lifespan than human cultivators, and it is said that they have many ancestors. Gather the disciples. In 2 days, we will destroy the Blood Feather clan. Ling Zhao's expression was calm, and there was not much emotion on his face. How dare these 3 sinners, whose lineages have been severed, call themselves gods? Ridiculous. But yes, just as the immortal form sect master was about to speak, he saw Ling Zhao's eyes turn cold, and an invisible force came crashing down, almost crushing him to the ground. Young master, that Lin Yan, I will spare his life for now. Ling Xiao raised his head and looked outside the hall. At this moment, Lin Yan's figure was tied to a stone pillar by a group of immortal form sect disciples. He looked like a sinner waiting to be executed. Only by being alive could he attract the attention of the mastermind. This was a reason why Ling Xiao did not kill him. This time, Ling Xiao did not come to the lower realm just to harvest the heaven's will of the lower realm. Lin Yan's backer was most likely a young master from the upper realm. To Ling Xiao, these people were all on his menu. At the same time, on a sacred mountain in the center of Ning province. This mountain was completely blood red. A bloody mist rose from it, covering the sky and revealing a terrifying aura. This was the forbidden area of Ning province, where the Blood Feather clan resided. Everyone in the 9 province knew about this clan. They were an ancient clan from the upper realm with a long history and a deep foundation. There were many experts in the clan, including several saints, and all of them were above the 4th level of the saint realm. In this desolate lower realm, such strength was already at the peak of the world, and no one dared to challenge their authority. However, 900 years ago, the Blood Feather clan was in turmoil, and Yu Xuanyi was wandering outside at that time. 300 years ago, she was adopted by Lin Yan's father. On the surface, Yu Xuanyi looked like a child, but she was older than Lin Yan's father. What? Xuanyi's life, Jade, is broken? Investigate. At this moment, an angry roar suddenly rang out from the peak of the sacred mountain. The bloody clouds within thousands of miles shook, and countless ancient auras seemed to be awakening. Out of guilt, the Lord of the Blood Feather clan had granted Yu Xuanyi's every request ever since he found her. Even the bronze fragment that Lin Yan had fused with was obtained by Yu Xuanyi from her father. Although the Lord of the Blood Feather clan knew that the item was extremely precious, the immortal intent in the fragment was extremely resistant to the aura of the Blood Feather clan, so he could not refine it. In the end, this treasure related to the immortal graveyard fell into Lin Yan's hands. It was also because of this that he had reawakened his divine body and reached the peak of his life. Clan Lord. Just as the Lord of the Blood Feather clan was about to explode, a blood-robed elder suddenly walked into the hall. I heard from Yu Huatian that the young lady and a young man named Lin Yin went to the immortal form sect in Feng province. Now that their life jade is broken, it is very likely. You mean that the immortal form sect killed Xuanyi and the 3rd elder? The Lord of the Blood Feather clan frowned, killing intent swirling in his eyes. With Yu Huatian's strength, he should not have died so easily at the hands of the immortal form sect. However, in the entire Feng province, only the immortal form sect was capable of killing the 3rd elder. How dare the immortal form sect make an enemy of the Blood Feather clan? Grand Elder, quickly gather the other 4 elders and follow me to the immortal form sect. Chapter 1456. Yes, clan leader. The 1st elder of the Blood Feather tribe bowed and was about to leave when a look of hesitation appeared in his eyes. By the way, clan leader, there's news from the Demon King Palace that a lord from the upper world is interested in joining forces with us and will be arriving in Ning Prefecture soon. Demon King Palace? The clan leader of the Blood Feather tribe frowned and hesitated. Although this faction was not as powerful as the 3 god tribes, it was still one of the top factions in the 9 prefectures. The ancient mountains and rivers of Ing Prefecture had always been occupied by powerful demons. The Demon King Palace was founded by a few powerful demons. Of course, the Demon King Palace alone was not enough for the Blood Feather tribe to be afraid of. However, the Blood Feather tribe had to be cautious when dealing with a powerful being from the upper world. Although the Bloodfeather tribe had the noblest bloodline from the upper world, the tribe had declined under the suppression of the heavenly Tao of the world of dead souls. A force from the upper world that could be addressed as a lure by the Demon King Palace was probably not simple. However, the clan leader of the Bloodfeather tribe was slightly puzzled. Why would someone from the upper world choose to join forces with the Bloodfeather tribe? One should know that the Black Demon clan had the deepest foundation among the three divine clans. The clan with the most clansmen was the Green Ghost clan. No matter how one looked at it, they were the best choice for allies. Something was wrong. There must be a reason for this abnormality. Clan leader, why don't I lead the elders to the Immortal Form sect to investigate the cause of young lady's death? Why don't you stay in the tribe and wait for the Demon King Palace to arrive? The first elder, Yuhuaji, said in a low voice. The clan leader of the Bloodfeather tribe shook his head. It won't take more than 3 days to destroy the Immortal Form sect. There's still time. Yes. Yuhuaji's eyes turned cold, but he did not say anything else. A day passed in the blink of an eye. In front of the Immortal Form sect's main hall, the blood on Lin Yan's body had already dried up. It was just that his bones had long been shattered by Ling Zhao's palm and were completely unable to heal. That's right. Before he came to the Immortal Form sect, he had met someone from the upper world who tried to recruit him. That person claimed to have come from an immortal inheritance. His power was enormous, and even in the upper realm, he was an existence second to none. On the other hand, Lin Yan's talent was simply too heaven-defying. It would be a pity for him to stay in the lower plane. However, although Lin Yan yearned for the upper realm, he could not let go of his hatred for Hua, Fei, and Lin Wuji. Therefore, he was not in a hurry to agree. Instead, he wanted to personally take revenge before making a decision. However, he did not expect that a simple counterattack would attract a terrifying existence like Ling Xiao. If Lin Yan was not wrong, the young man in black should also be from the upper realm. Therefore, he crushed the spirit jade in an attempt to save his life. Lin Yan felt a little ashamed of himself for doing this. However, only by staying alive could he prove himself, and only then could he trample all these enemies who had brought him shame to death. Buzz. Until, at the end of the world, streams of light suddenly flickered. Soon after, countless powerful auras appeared in the sky above the Immortal Form sect. The leader was a young man in white. He had a handsome face and an awe-inspiring noble aura. Behind him were 4 young men and women. Behind the 5 of them was an old man in a gray robe. The auras of these 6 people were extremely powerful, especially the young man in white. Although he was slightly older, he was not more than 1,000 years old. However, his body seemed to contain a trace of holy will. Lin Yan. When a young man in white saw Lin Yan trapped in the middle of the square and his aura weakened, a murderous intent appeared on his face. In his opinion, there was no need to worry about the lower plane. Even the 3 sinners would not dare to make an enemy out of him. Since Lin Yan had crushed the spirit jade he left behind, it meant that he had agreed to join the sect behind him. Today, he was here to show Lin Yan his strength. Brother Qiao. Lin Yan raised his head with difficulty, his eyes trembling, although he did not know why the young man in black did not kill him. However, the arrival of the people in front of him moved him somewhat. At this moment, Lin Yan did not know that Yushwani had died at the hands of Yiqing Chan. He only thought that she had escaped in the chaos. In Lin Yan's opinion, Yushwani would not abandon him so easily. She had most likely left to call for reinforcements. With the protection of the Bloodfeather tribe and these people from the upper plane, the young man in black would not dare to act recklessly. Who is it? Who dares to injure you to this extent? The young man in white and the others descended from the sky, their faces filled with resentment. At this moment, he could feel that the spiritual energy in Lin Yan's body had been completely suppressed, and his vitality was dissipating. Even with his combat body, it would be an extremely slow process for him to recover from such a serious injury. Brother Qiao, don't worry. No matter who it is, I will personally avenge you today. The young man in white snorted, his aura domineering. However, As soon as he finished speaking, he saw several figures walking over from the distant hall. Among them was a peerless figure in black. His eyes narrowed, and he felt an indescribable sense of unease. "Avenge you." Ling Zhao's lips curled up, his expression extremely gentle. At this moment, he could see that the young man in white was indeed blessed with providence. The number of 7,000 was similar to Lin Yan's, and he had a strange bloodline. Although neither of them had reached the level of the Child of Destiny, they were still flesh and blood. Moreover, these geniuses from the upper plane were Ling Zhao's potential enemies. Ling people wanted to destroy the Realm Lord's palace and stand tall in the sky. They were bound to become enemies with the heavens and earth. No matter what the imperishable lineages would choose in the end, the more talented their peers were, the better it was better for them to die. After all, in the hearts of their respective sects, they were the opportunity to fight for the heavens. What Ling Zhao wanted to do was to break these opportunities with his own hands. In the end, he would win the hearts of all. "You are the young master of the Ling people, Ling Zhao." The white-clothed young man's eyes were solemn as he instantly guessed Ling Zhao's identity. There were less than 10 people in the current generation who could give him such pressure, especially this young man's age. He looked extremely young. Other than those in the sequence, there was only one person in the entire Qingtsang continent who could have such a domineering aura, the young master of the Ling people, Ling Zhao. His black robe was peerless, and he looked like an immortal. He did not expect to meet such a difficult opponent in just 7 days in the lower plane. At the end of the day, there were only a few forces in the lower plane who had the strength to fight for the ultimate destiny. As for these powers, they were in opposing positions to begin with. Sometimes the fight for destiny was also a fight for providence. Fortunately, in the lower plane, the most powerful cultivators were only in the Saint realm. Therefore, the threat of the Ling people was reduced. "Since you recognize him, then it's easy. I want to know how you plan to avenge him." Ling Zhao smiled and sized up the 6 people in front of him, 2 saints and 4 revered planes. Although the gray-robed elder's strength was at the 8th level of the Saint realm, it was still not worth mentioning in Ling Zhao's eyes. "Young Master Ling, I am Qiao Shan from the Imperial Palace. I wonder if you can give me some face and spare the life of this little brother of mine." Just as Lin Yan's expression was gloomy and he was waiting for Brother Qiao to show off his skills, Brother Qiao suddenly bowed and said respectfully. Chapter 1457. Brother Qiao. Lin Yan's mouth was slightly agape, his eyes filled with confusion. Even the immortal form sect master behind Ling Zhao was a little taken aback at this moment. They had all sensed the aura of the gray-robed old man. An 8th grade sage stage expert was practically unparalleled in the 9 prefectures. Even the immortal form sect did not have a single person who could match him. Logically speaking, with such an expert following him, the white-robed young man should have been arrogant. But why did he suddenly soften? 10-second-hand man? Suddenly, the immortal form sect master seemed to have guessed something. Perhaps he had underestimated this young master's deterrence from the start. No. At this moment, Ling Zhao was still smiling, but his tone was extremely straightforward. No wonder he was the current generation Imperial Jew. In Ling Zhao's opinion, Qiao Shan had most likely seen the power of Lin Yan's battle physique and felt sympathetic towards him. It was no wonder. The flame crystals that covered his entire body were indeed a terrifying defense. It would be extremely difficult for someone of the same generation to break through such a defense. But it just so happened that Ling Zhao's combat strength had long since surpassed the scope of his peers. "You." Qiao Shan's eyes narrowed. He clearly did not expect Ling Zhao to reject him so straightforwardly. Although the Taigu Ling people had an unparalleled foundation, the Heavenly Imperial Palace was also an immortal. The 12 absolutes of the Heavenly Imperial Palace were even more terrifying. Oh, it seemed like they were the current generation 9 absolutes. Qiao Shan had already lowered himself to the extreme. Ling Zhao only needed to go with the flow and do him a favor, and this matter would be completely resolved. Wouldn't it be better to turn hostility into friendship and take care of each other with more friends? Lin Yin killed a disciple of the immortal form sect. He was rude and unreasonable. Do you have a problem with me punishing him? Ling Zhao's eyes were clear, and his tone was cold. In the lower realm, he had fewer worries, but that did not mean he would lose his vigilance. Indiscriminately killing the innocent was an act of villains and devils. Ling Xiao, the light of righteousness, will kill you because you deserve to die. Of course, the most important thing was that he didn't have the confidence to kill an 8th grade Saint Stage expert in the world of souls. Under the watchful eyes of so many people, if someone wanted to frame him, it would be easy to find evidence. One had to know that he did not believe that no one from the Realm Lord Palace would come to such a lower realm that contained such a precious treasure. I wouldn't dare. Young Master Ling, what should I do for you to let Lin Yin go? Qiao Shan suppressed the anger in his heart and raised his head to look at the young man with unparalleled beauty. In the end, unless it was absolutely necessary, he didn't want to fall out with this young man too early. Everyone in Azure Sky knew about Ling Zhao's talent. But what Xiao Shan truly feared was that he had once shattered strength absolute King Yin with a single punch. Although Wang Yan's strength was not at the top of the 12 absolutes, his physical strength was extremely terrifying. However, he was still shattered by Ling Zhao's punch. Therefore, Qiao Shan was still somewhat fearful of Ling Xiao. What should I do? Ling Xiao frowned as if he was deep in thought. In the end, he shook his head with a solemn expression. Lin Yin must die. If you want to save him, you must defeat me. Otherwise, my Dao heart will not allow a traitor like him to live. What? Traitor of the sect? You're framing me. Lin Yin gritted his teeth in anger. Just as he was about to speak, he heard the immortal form sect master's cold voice. Evil disciple, how dare you quibble? As soon as he finished speaking, the true Saint Stage expert struck out with his palm and knocked Lin Yin unconscious. This, Qiao Shan and the others narrowed their eyes. The more they thought about it, the more they felt that things were not as simple as they seemed. They knew about Ling Zhao's temperament. His loyalty and righteousness were praised throughout the world. It was said that the young master of the Ling people had almost died on the day he was born in order to save the people of the lower realm. Could it be that the immortal form sect master had tricked him? Young Master Ling Xiao, is there some kind of misunderstanding? Lin Yin colluded with the sinful Blood Feather tribe and killed their young master, Lin Wuji. You call this a misunderstanding? Ling Zhao's eyes were dark. Regardless of whether Qiao Shan was willing to fight or not, he had no intention of letting the current Yuju go. Colluding with the sinful Blood Feather tribe was not a big or small crime. It all depended on one's acting skills. Although the Realm Lord was missing, the Realm Lord Palace still controlled the Azure Continent. As for the 3 great sinner clans, they had been suppressed here by the Realm Lord. The Heavenly Imperial Palace was an immortal inheritance. If they colluded with the 3 great races, Ling Xiao would be able to uphold justice and kill them on the spot. What? The Blood Feather tribe? Qiao Shan's eyes trembled as he hesitated. However, when he thought about his agreement with Lin Yin, it would be a disgrace to his Dao heart if he left in such a sorry state. Phew! Finally, Qiao Shan took a deep breath and looked at Ling Xiao solemnly. Young Master Ling, if I can take Lin Yin away today, I will definitely ask him to cut off his ties with the Blood Feather tribe. What do you think? That depends on whether you have the ability to do so. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. The moment he stepped forward, hundreds of swords followed behind him. Excuse me. Based on Qiao Shan's understanding of Lin Yin, he would never betray the sect. Moreover, if Lin Yin was such a despicable person, he would have used this as a condition to destroy the immortal form sect. Wouldn't that be easier? Therefore, there must be some kind of misunderstanding. Lin Yan's battle constitution was hard to come by. As long as he could enter the Sage Realm, he would be invincible. On the path of the immortal Dao, the one with the biggest fist was the one with the right. As long as he could defeat Ling Xiao fair and square today, this storm would be completely settled. As for the Blood Feather tribe, They did not dare to step out of the world of dead spirits. As long as Lin Yan ascended to the upper world and saw the true vastness of the world, he would be able to let go of his worries. In the end, the higher a man stood, the higher the standard for choosing a partner. First love was beautiful, but the most suitable couple would always be the one who progressed together. Phew! Xiao Shan took a deep breath as the holy will around him surged. The vast expanse of blue sky was instantly destroyed, and his figure furiously rushed towards Ling Xiao. Buzz! The sound of swords suddenly rang out. Above the 100 swords, divine light shot into the sky and turned into a 1,000-foot-long sword shadow that slashed down from the sky. Instantly, a 10,000-mile-long crack appeared in the sky, intimidating the surroundings. Even the master of the Blood Feather tribe and the others, who were rushing over, suddenly stopped in their tracks. Their eyes were filled with fear. "This is tribe leader. I'm afraid the immortal form sect is very terrifying." Yu Huaji and the others sighed softly, their voices grave. In these chaotic times, evildoers ran rampant. A single misstep could lead to the destruction of one's tribe. When we reach the immortal form sect, we'll act according to the circumstances. The Blood Feather tribe leader frowned slightly. He could not let go of his hatred for his daughter and quickly headed toward the immortal form sect. Behind him, many Blood Feather tribe experts were hesitant, but there was nothing they could do. Boom! In the immortal form sect, sword aura fell. The laws of order converged into a river that covered the sky and earth, instantly enveloping Xiao Shan's figure. Chapter 1458. Boom! The tip of the sword shocked the world, cutting off the universe. On the other hand, Xiao Shan's eyes similarly revealed a wisp of seriousness. Ling Zhao's sword posture was known to all. He was known as the sword immortal of this generation. However, Xiao Shan only understood that the title of sword immortal was not just for show when he faced the torrential sword aura. At the very least, no one in this generation would be able to withstand such a terrifying sword aura. Thousands of sword auras fell from the sky like a surging river, cutting the space within 100 miles into nothingness. However, Ling Xiao could feel a wisp of holy will quietly awakening wherever the sword radiance passed. It was like a reef in the waves. Although it was slightly small, it was still standing steadily and unperturbed. As expected of Yu Ju, his defense was the best in this generation. Ling Xiao looked calm as he looked at the place where the sword aura dissipated. A cold light lit up, and Xiao Shan's figure appeared in everyone's sight. However, after seeing Xiao Shan's current state, Ling Xiao finally understood why Yu Ju of the Heavenly Imperial Mansion insisted on saving Lin Yan. He was also covered in layers of divine crystals, which were extremely dazzling. What was different from Lin Yan was that the divine crystal on his body was not red in color. Instead, it was transparent and sparkling like a crystal. Divine crystal bloodline? It was obvious that Xiao Shan's trump card was this strange bloodline. It was similar to Lin Yan's and was indestructible. Phew! After the sword aura dissipated, Xiao Shan heaved a sigh of relief and swallowed the mouthful of blood that was about to reach his mouth. Just now, he could feel that the divine crystals on his body showed signs of shattering. If the sword aura was a little stronger, he would have shattered along with the divine crystals. Master Ling Xiao, you have seen my strength. As the saying goes, no discord, no concord. Why don't we? Xiao Shan smiled gently and no longer had the arrogance from before. At this moment, he had a feeling that if they were to fight to the death, there was a high chance that he would not be able to defeat Ling Xiao. If this is what you're relying on, then you can die now. Ling Xiao's eyes were clear and did not show much emotion. Just now, he had only casually swung his sword and did not use any moves at all. Although Xiao Shan barely managed to block it, his aura was clearly weakened. Yu Ju was nothing more than this. What? Xiao Shan's eyes narrowed slightly as anger appeared on his face. Ling People's young master was too arrogant. But it seemed like it was impossible to stop halfway. If Qiao Shan admitted defeat now, this trip to the world of souls would end prematurely. Not only that, but his Dao heart and reputation would also be shattered. Ling Xiao, do you really want to fight me to the death? No matter how talented you are, the world of souls has just opened. Once you get hurt, humph. Qiao Shan snorted. He had a trump card that could only be used once in a short period of time. He could be said to be invincible in the Saint realm. Even if Ling Xiao could defeat him, he would have to pay the price. Buzz. However, this time, Ling Xiao did not waste any time. The moment he took a step forward, he appeared in front of Qiao Shan. In the next moment, he stretched out his hand and punched Qiao Shan's chest. To be honest, Qiao Shan was clearly a little confused. Ling Xiao actually gave up on the sword and used his physical strength to fight against him. One had to know that his divine crystal defense could even resist a sage weapon, let alone a mere physical strength. So what if you're an invincible immortal? You're still an immortal after all. The number of invincible realm experts who have been defeated by me is already uncountable. Qiao Shan roared furiously as he made up his mind. At this moment, he could only intimidate Ling Xiao and make him retreat. Divine force, absolute defense. Boom! In a short moment, thousands of divine patterns appeared on the ice crystal outside Qiao Shan's body. The patterns that were filled with pure gold colors were like the totems of immortals and gods. They were filled with endless mysteries. Then he punched out toward Ling Xiao. Crimson rays of light surrounded his arm, and the entire void cracked open at this moment. Senior brother Qiao actually used this divine technique right for the start. The remaining Heavenly Imperial Mansion disciples looked at each other. Clearly, they did not expect Qiao Shan to use his greatest trump card at the beginning of the battle. Absolute defense was invincible. It was said that under this defense, the speed of the divine blood flowing in Qiao Shan's body would be 3 times faster than usual. In other words, the hardness of the divine crystal would be 3 times stronger, and his physical body would be comparable to a supreme being's. However, the weakness of this divine technique was equally obvious. Once the power in the divine blood was exhausted, Qiao Shan's body would be completely weak, and he would not be able to use any spiritual energy for a long time. It seemed that the young master of Ling people was also a powerful opponent. He was able to force senior brother Qiao to such a state. Boom! The moment their fists collided, the entire divine mountain seemed to be unable to withstand such divine power, and an ear-piercing buzzing sound erupted. On the square, cracks that were as thick as an arm spread out like a spiderweb. It was a ghastly sight. As for the spectating celestial sect disciples, they were all sent flying by the collision of the energy ripples. Some of the low-level disciples even had blood flowing out of their mouths. Ling Yin frowned slightly and opened his eyes in a daze. But what shocked everyone was that even after using such a divine technique, Qiao Shan was still sent flying. The arm that collided with Ling Xiao was completely shattered at this moment. When he saw this scene, Lin Yan's eyes instantly widened. His swollen face was filled with fear. When he first met Qiao Shan, he had a brief confrontation with this monster from the upper realm. Brother Qiao's physical body could be said to be the most terrifying one among all the living beings he had ever seen. It was so hard. Even so, his arm was still shattered. How is this possible? At this moment, the horror in Qiao Shan's heart had already suppressed the intense pain from his arm. He really could not understand how his defense, which could not be broken even by a powerhouse at the peak of the Sage Realm, suddenly lost its power. In front of Ling Xiao, he was like an ant that could be casually squashed to death. Young Lord Ling, Qiao Shan's lips trembled slightly. Just as he was about to speak, he saw a black whirlpool suddenly appear in the young man's eyes. His figure appeared in front of Qiao Shan almost instantly. Qi and blood gushed out from the fist that was extended out. It was like a volcano that could suppress the 9 heavens and 10 earths. This fist was even more terrifying than the previous one. In fact, wherever the fist passed, Xiao Shan could see countless shadows of gods and demons shattering the heavens. In the blink of an eye, they were destroyed by a strange force. Before Xiao Shan could admit defeat, Ling Zhao's fist was already 3 feet away from his chest. Damn it! Xiao Shan's pupils constricted. All the hair on his body stood on end. He had a vague feeling that this Ling people's young lord was not sparring with him at all. Instead, he was seizing the opportunity to kill him. At this critical moment, Xiao Shan's eyes suddenly flashed with determination. The hand seals in his hands changed rapidly. The countless golden runes around his body immediately emitted a blood-red glow. Then, it filled Xiao Shan's entire body like a bloodline. Boom! Chapter 1459. This is, on the square, the 4 heavenly imperial mansions disciples were stunned. They suddenly felt uneasy, especially the blood-color divine crystal on Xiao Shan's body. It looked extremely evil and gave people a terrifying pressure. When the blood crystal appears, there is no life. Behind the 4 of them, the Saint Realm old man suddenly sighed softly. There was a hint of doubt in his eyes. Since Xiao Shan was already forced to such a state, why didn't he just admit defeat and executed such a forbidden technique instead? One had to know that this defense was infused with the power of divine blood into the blood crystal. It consumed Xiao Shan's true vitality and blood qi. Even if he won in the end, it would affect his foundation and even hinder his future cultivation. Dead? Elder, senior martial brother Xiao, won't be defeated, right? Boom! Just as everyone was in shock, Ling Zhao's fist finally landed on George's chest. Instantly, the bluestone plaza beneath their feet collapsed and crumbled. The space behind him transformed into a black hole that seemed to be connected to another era. It was a terrifying sight. At this moment, the 2 figures stood quietly on the spot with grave expressions. As for Ling Zhao's arm, which was hidden under the black robe, a demonic intent flashed and disappeared. Layers of reverse scales snaked out like the hand of a demon god, exuding a shocking pressure. The entire immortal form sect was dead silent. Especially the square and space that was riddled with holes, it allowed everyone to clearly sense the shocking danger contained within this short period of time. Although Ling Zhao had only used 1 sword and 2 punches, the 3 attacks had the power to kill a saint. Even the immortal form sect master felt a chill run down his spine. The evildoers from the upper realm were terrifying. Crack! Until, suddenly, a strange, shattering sound came from the square. Everyone's eyes narrowed. Immediately after, the blood crystal on Xiao Shan's body began to crack at a speed visible to the naked eye. The life force of the current imperial Jew of the heavenly imperial manor was also extinguished. Even at the moment of death, his eyes were still filled with a wisp of dense shock and disbelief. He couldn't figure out how a supreme, sword immortal who dominated the sky with his sword could have such terrifying physical strength. Of course, when compared to the Holy Sun from the Blood Demon Abyss, Xiao Shan's defense was already terrifying. At the very least, when Ling Zhao used the might of the devil will, he wasn't directly smashed into nothingness like Li Chun. Senior Qiao, the faces of the 5 heavenly imperial palace members and the immortal form sect disciples turned pale when they saw the blood crystal shatter. After today's battle, they finally understood what it meant to be undefeatable. A monstrous genius of the Saint stage had been killed by a single punch from the young master. What kind of battle prowess was this? Even if one were to look at the thousands of sects in the land of the 9 prefectures, it was likely that no one would be able to compare to the old ancestors who had been famous for a long time. Of course, the people from the Heavenly Imperial Palace were even more shocked. The current generation's Yuju was known as Qing Tsang's defense ceiling. At the very least, other than those 10 echelons, it was very difficult for anyone in Qing Tsang to break through Xiao Shan's defense so easily. But today, they watched with their own eyes as senior brother Qiao was smashed into pieces with a single punch. Gulp! Shock and fear had completely suppressed his anger. In other words, they did not have the courage to be angry in front of such a domineering young master of the ancient clan. At the end of the day, it was a fair fight between the two of them. On the other hand, Ling Xiao had killed Xiao Shan with his own strength. There was no trace of fault in his actions. On the other hand, Xiao Shan had forcefully stepped forward and provoked such a powerful enemy for the heavenly imperial palace. He was simply courting death. At this moment, Lin Yan's mouth was agape and his eyes were glazed over. He had actually fainted from the shock. At this moment, he finally understood what kind of person he had provoked. Beep. Congratulations to the host for killing the person with providence. You have gained 7,000 luck points and 70,000 villain points. Beep. Congratulations to the host for killing the person with providence. You have received the reward, Divine Crystal Bloodline. Hearing the system notification, Ling Xiao's expression did not change at all. It seemed like he had won this battle easily, but he felt a little pressured. A person of the current era with 7,000 providence was actually able to withstand his sword force and physical strength. It was obvious that the path to becoming undefeatable was far more dangerous than what the world had imagined. Young Master is amazing. Just as Ling Xiao looked over, the elder of the heavenly imperial palace felt a chill in his heart. He actually bowed to Ling Xiao in front of all the disciples' astonished gazes. Lin Yin colluded with the sinners and should be punished. Xiao Shan wanted to cover for him. This is truly heartbreaking. This elder, if you are not satisfied with this matter, I will personally pay a visit to the Lord of the heavenly imperial palace when we return to Qingsong. We will then go to the Lord of the heavenly imperial palace to discuss this matter. Ling Xiao's expression was indifferent. There was no change in his expression. If this matter had come out of the mouth of a disciple from a small sect, the heavenly imperial palace would have sent people to destroy this sect. Even if the two of them went to the Lord of the heavenly imperial palace, the snow-tide rock would probably do the heavenly imperial palace a favor and destroy this small sect. However, if this matter had come out of Ling Xiao's mouth, the heavenly imperial palace would be the unlucky one. Think about it carefully. Young master, you're being too serious. Xiao Shan met the wrong person and acted on his own accord. This matter has nothing to do with the heavenly imperial palace. The elder shook his head and smiled. Suddenly, he sensed something and turned to look into the distance. At the same time, Ling Xiao's gaze was also fixed on the sky. Numerous figures with wings on their backs silently appeared in that 500 kilometers area. They were like a blood cloud that practically enveloped the entire sky. The corners of Ling Xiao's mouth curled up into a smile. Blood Feather Tribe, the sect master of the immortal form sect, exclaimed. He was instinctively afraid. However, when he thought of the power that young master had displayed just now, he carefully covered up this fear. They really came uninvited. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. He turned to the elder of the heavenly imperial palace and said, "Since elder said that the heavenly imperial palace has nothing to do with the sinners, you will have to prove it later." The elder of the heavenly imperial palace was stunned and his eyes narrowed. Ling People's young master intended to use him as a weapon. However, he did not dare to disobey at all. He was afraid that Ling Xiao would return to the Azure continent and cause a ruckus in the Realm Lord Hall. If so, the heavenly imperial palace would suffer great losses. Young master, don't worry. The sinners deserve to be killed. If they dare to come, they will not be able to return. Elder, you are so loyal. I have yet to ask for your name. Ling Xiao rubbed his hands together and nodded slowly. He looked at the heavenly imperial palace's saint in front of him with admiration. It was as if he was the one who was at the 8th level of the true saint stage. He was very pleased with the words and actions of Junior. This old man is Chen Daonian. Greetings, Master Ling Xiao. Elder Chun, please. Ling Xiao turned around and walked to the front of the hall and sat down on a large chair. Beside him, the disciples of the Immortal Form sect served tea and fruits carefully. The sect master of the Blood Feather tribe and the others finally descended from the sky and landed on the square. Sect master of the Immortal Form sect, come out and answer me. Chapter 1460. How dare you? How dare a mere sinner yell in front of a young master? Chun Daonyan's face darkened. He stepped forward and stood in front of the group of experts from the Bloodfeather tribe. At this moment, there were 5 saints standing behind the Lord of the Bloodfeather tribe. However, they were only at the 3rd or 4th level of the saint realm. They were far from Chun Daonyan's level. Unfortunately, the Lord of the Bloodfeather tribe had brought all the elites of the tribe with him. His original intention was to destroy the immortal transformation sect and avenge Yushwani. However, for some reason, the Lord of the Bloodfeather tribe felt an inexplicable sense of fear when he looked at the ordinary-looking old man in front of him. In fact, he naturally saw the black-robed young man sitting in front of the main hall, leisurely drinking tea. The Lord of the Bloodfeather tribe felt a chill from the bottom of his heart. They were from the upper world. It was obvious that those who dared to call the Bloodfeather tribe sinners were from the upper world. However, a mere old man and a young man dared to be so arrogant in the land of the 9 states. Were they not taking the Bloodfeather tribe seriously? I don't care who you are. We are here today for one thing. Did our young master, Yushwani, die in the immortal transformation sect? An old man beside the Lord of the Bloodfeather tribe suddenly whispered in his ear, "Lord, that young man is the young master's lover, Lin Yin." What? The Lord of the Bloodfeather tribe was shocked. He sent out a wisp of soul consciousness to wake Lin Yin up. "Lin Yin, tell me who killed Shwani?" "Shwani?" Lin Yin looked at the crowd with misty eyes. In the next moment, his face froze. "Shwani is dead. You don't know?" The Lord of the Bloodfeather tribe was taken aback. His face darkened. "Trash. I'll say it again. I don't care who you are. Hand over the person who killed my son. Otherwise, today, Elder Chun, what are you waiting for?" Ling Xiao put down his teacup and said indifferently. However, a hint of surprise appeared on Chun Daonyan's face. He first looked at the hundreds of Bloodfeather clan members in front of him, then turned to look at the immortal form sect master and the many disciples standing behind Ling Xiao. Finally, he swallowed his saliva. "Young master, you mean, does your heavenly imperial palace still want to prove your innocence? Once I give the order, these evil cultivators will immediately be annihilated. Do you still have a chance to prove it?" Ling Xiao turned around and gave the immortal form sect master a look. The latter immediately understood and waved his hand. The sect guarding Grand Formation instantly covered the sky and blocked off all the escape routes of the Bloodfeather race experts. Yes. Thank you, young master, for giving me this opportunity. Young master is so righteous." Chun Daonyan's face was livid, but he did not dare to refute. He could only brace himself and face the hundreds of Bloodfeather tribe experts alone. In the eyes of the crowd, this scene was somewhat tragic and stirring. The expression of the Lord of the Bloodfeather tribe had already turned completely gloomy when the Grand Formation rose. "Immortal Form Sect Master, do you really want to become enemies with the Bloodfeather tribe?" Push. The Immortal Form Sect Master's face was full of arrogance. After witnessing Ling Xiao's strength, this saint stage expert no longer had any misgivings. Good. Since that is the case, elders." The Lord of the Bloodfeather tribe's eyes flickered with scarlet light. He suddenly waved his hand, and the people behind him immediately rushed forward to meet Chun Daonyan. A great battle was about to break out. Terrifying spiritual power spread out and dyed the sky red. Ling Xiao leisurely sipped his tea and ate his spirit fruit, occasionally looking up at the square. At this moment, divine light surged around Chun Daonyan's body. The moment he struck out with his palm, it instantly turned into a 100-meter-long divine seal that forced the people in front of him to retreat. Even some of the weaker disciples of the Bloodfeather clan were smashed into a bloody mist by this palm. 8th grade Saint stage. Sensing the terrifying fluctuations contained in the palm, both the Lord of the Bloodfeather tribe and the elders of the Bloodfeather tribe had a look of fear in their eyes. This strength was comparable to the strongest ancestor in their tribe. Given their strength, it was impossible for them to contend with such a powerful opponent. "Great Elder, join forces with the second Elder to stop him. I will think of a way to break the formation. The Lord of the Blood Feather tribe's eyes were cold. He had already sensed the danger. An 8th grade Saint Stage expert had the strength to slaughter them. Once the Immortal Form Sect experts attacked, they would not be able to escape today. As long as they could return to their tribe, not only would they be protected by the Ancestor, but the experts of the Demon King Palace and the lords from the upper world would also arrive soon. By then, it would not be too late to take revenge. All right, Yu Huaji gritted his teeth. Although he was unwilling, this was not the time for internal strife. He could only brace himself and stand in front of Chun Daoyan. Boom! Boom! The 2 Blood Feather tribe experts flashed with bloody light as they stepped into the void and struck out with their palms. Instantly, the void shattered, and the sun and moon fell together. At the end of the sky, there seemed to be a sea of blood floating, suppressing all living things. However, in the face of such a terrifying attack, Chun Daoyan did not panic at all. The moment he stretched out his palm, a huge golden bell rose into the sky. Its power shook the heavens as it smashed toward the sea of blood. Rumble! The great Tao of the void shattered. The moment the golden bell entered the sea of blood, it suppressed the boundless blood. Even Yu Huaji and Yu Huaji's figures were smashed into nothingness by the divine light. Oh no! Seeing this, the Lord of the Blood Feather tribe's eyes flickered. A trace of despair finally appeared in his heart. With his strength, it would be difficult for him to break the Immortal Form Sect's protective formation in a short time. Could it be that he was really going to die here today? No, I refuse to accept this. Elders, use the Blood Feather Divine Seal. The Lord of the Blood Feather tribe roared at the sky. He turned to look at the ancient golden bell and took a deep breath. Hearing this, the remaining 3 Saint Stage elders and countless Exalt Stage and God Emperor level Bloodfeather clansmen were filled with terror and unwillingness. However, the great elder had been smashed into pieces by the bell. If they hesitated, they would still die. A buzzing sound resounded through the heavens. The Lord of the Blood Feather tribe's expression was extremely gloomy. He suddenly reached out, grabbed the 2 blood feathers behind him, and pulled hard. Rip! Blood mist scattered. The Lord of the Blood Feather tribe held the feathers with both hands. His expression was solemn as he chanted, as if he was performing an ancient ceremony. Behind him, hundreds of Blood Feather tribe members pulled out their blood feathers at the same time and joined their hands together. It was an extremely solemn scene. The falling rain directly dyed the entire square blood red. It was a ghastly sight. Vaguely, an extremely ancient and terrifying power seemed to be gradually awakening from the blood. You actually self-harmed, as expected of the evil race. Such means deserve to be executed. In front of the main hall, Ling Xiao shook his head with a look of pity and righteousness. Chapter 1461. Sacrificial God Seal. The Lord of the Blood Feather clan raised his head to look at the sky. His eyes were filled with blood-red runes, but they revealed a devout and sacred intent. Above his head, a boundless blood-red radiance rose and transformed into the shape of an ancient seal. This ancient seal was 1,000 feet in size and had many runes and totems engraved on it. From afar, it looked like it was made of blood and thousands of feathers. A wave of energy comparable to a top-tier saint artifact flowed and crashed down. In a short while, the golden radiance that filled the sky was replaced by blood-red radiance. The entire sky was dark and oppressive. Of course, after using this attack, the auras of the countless Blood Feather clan members were extremely weak. It was obvious that they had used up all of their spiritual energy. Only the Lord of the Blood Feather clan had a cold expression. He raised his hand and stood in the sky like a divine king, wanting to destroy everything. Young master, this wave of energy is so terrifying. I'm afraid that old uncle can't withstand it. Beside Ling Xiao, Xinyuan Weiyang covered her red lips with her jade-like hand. Her pretty face was pale. The Xinyuan clan cultivated the power of the divine blood. Therefore, they were extremely sensitive to the power of blood in this world. Even with Xianyuan Weiyang's strength, she felt a trace of pressure from the blood-red seal. It was obvious that this attack contained an extremely terrifying power. Should we help him? Otherwise, later, hearing this, Ling Xiao smiled gently and stretched out his hand to flick Weiyang's little head. Little fool, if you help him now, aren't you looking down on Elder Chun? Xianyuan Weiyang frowned slightly and tilted her head. She seemed to have understood something. Oh, right. Then we'll wait for him to be killed, and then we'll avenge him. Even with Yi Qingchan's personality, she could not help but laugh when she heard Xianyuan Weiyang's words. This silly girl was so naive and cute. Boom! Finally, as the Lord of the Blood Feather clan waved his hand, the 100-foot-long blood-red seal suddenly fell from the sky. Countless blood runes filled the sky and gradually gathered above the blood seal. Vaguely, a heart-palpitating evil fluctuation spread out, enveloping the entire Immortal Form sect. It was clear that the clan lord of the Blood Feather tribe not only wanted to kill Chen Daoyan, but he also wanted to raise the entire Immortal Form sect to the ground. The reason why Ling Xiao had deliberately instigated Chen Daoyan to fight with the Blood Feather race was to test the strength of the Blood Feather race. It must be noted that it was different from the thousands of clans and sects in the world of souls. The three great sinful clans were all supreme orthodoxies that originated from the upper realm. Even though they had been suppressed for 100,000 years, their strength was not something a sect like the Immortal Form sect could compare to. At the very least, even with the strength of the Realm Lord back then, he wasn't able to completely wipe out the three races. From this, one could see how terrifying they were. Of course, no matter how terrifying it wouldn't be a threat to Ling Xiao as long as his cultivation hadn't broken through the Saint Realm. There was no need for him to waste his energy on a bunch of evil fiends without any luck. Rumble! The blood seal smashed down from the sky. After gathering the spiritual energy and blood chi of countless Blood Feather tribe experts, it expanded to a size of 10,000 feet. It was as if a part of the world was crashing down. The ancient mountains, divine forests, immortal palaces, and profound lights were all destroyed. Every wisp of blood radiance that fell from the seal seemed to be filled with a domineering aura that could destroy the world. In comparison, Chen Daoyan's figure was simply too small. At this moment, the heavenly Imperial Manor Elder's eyes were solemn. The spiritual light around his body continued to pour into the golden bell. In the blink of an eye, the divine bell expanded with the wind. It emitted a blinding golden light as it tried to fight against the blood seal. Boom! The moment the two collided, the entire blue sky was smashed to pieces. As for the ancient formation that originally enveloped the mountain peak, it shattered and disappeared without a trace. Crack! Accompanied by a loud noise, Chen Daoyan's expression changed drastically. He no longer concealed his holy will. The moment he took a step forward, his aura rose steadily, until his figure appeared under the golden bell. He clasped his hands together and pushed it fiercely toward the blood seal. In the next moment, Chen Daoyan's hand seals changed. The golden bell let out a sharp buzzing sound. The golden light suddenly shone brightly, and it exploded in the air. At this critical moment, Chen Daoyan chose to self-destruct his natal saint artifact. Whoosh! The golden light within a 1,000-mile radius was like the waves of the sea, rising and falling. The wisps were filled with a boundless holy will that made one's scalp tingle. The blood seal that was originally descending finally came to a stop due to this fluctuation. Then, under everyone's dumbfounded gazes, countless cracks appeared on it. The faces of the Lord of the Blood Feather tribe and Chen Daoyan turned pale at the same time. They spat out a mouthful of blood. Their auras were extremely weak. Let's go. However, just as the Lord of the Blood Feather tribe turned around and was about to escape the Immortal Form sect, he suddenly saw strange ice crystals fill the air. It's snowing. Everyone's eyes narrowed. Some of the Blood Feather Tribe disciples could not help but stretch out their hands to catch the ice crystals. However, in the next moment, they were horrified to discover that their arms and bodies had suddenly lost all feeling at the place where the ice crystals fell. Then, they were completely frozen. At the same time, an extremely terrifying wave of heat descended from the sky, dyeing the entire void red. Buzz! The sound of a sword suddenly rang out. Before anyone could react, they saw sword shadows piercing through space and slashing toward them. Elder Chun, I'm here to help you. A loud shout suddenly came from the front of the hall. Ling Xiao and the others stepped forward and harvested the countless disciples of the Blood Feather clan with weak auras. Chun Daoyan felt his body tremble when he heard that. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth again. It was obvious that his injuries were quite serious. The Lord of the Blood Feather tribe gritted his teeth and ignored his fellow tribesmen. He turned around and fled into the distance. Do you think you can escape? Evil demons should die. Today, I, Ling Xiao, represent justice and destroy all of you. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. A black lotus appeared in his eyes. A purplish-black lotus shadow suddenly appeared around the Lord of the Blood Feather tribe. A terrifying wave of heat that made one's scalp tingle immediately enveloped the sky. It was far more despairing than the curtain of fire above them. If it were in the past, the Lord of the Blood Feather tribe would be able to withstand it. However, he had broken his own wings and exhausted all his spiritual energy. Not only did he fail to destroy the Immortal Form sect, but he was also severely injured. As a result, the instant the lotus image fell, raging flames suddenly ignited on his body. The dark and deep color was like a dead lotus blooming on the other side of the river Styx. In an instant, his physical body and divine soul were incinerated. Gulp! Seeing this, the anger on Chun Daoyan's face finally subsided. Instead, it was replaced by a look of sincere reverence. It was obvious that the strength of the young master of the Ling people had surpassed the limits of the current generation. In his current state, if he angered the young master, he might very well be buried here with him. Chapter 1462. Young Master is mighty. It's all thanks to Young Master that we got rid of all the demons. The Immortal Form sect was in an uproar. All the disciples of the Immortal Form sect cheered in unison. However, none of them looked at Chun Daoyan, who was covered in blood. Haha, as cultivators, it is our duty to exterminate demons. Ling Xiao nodded and smiled. His expression was extremely humble. Seeing this, Chun Daoyan immediately laughed perfunctorily. Just as he was about to bid farewell and leave, he heard Ling Xiao say, Elder Chun, now that the Blood Feather clan has suffered such heavy losses, why don't we take this opportunity to kill our way in a Ning prefecture and completely wipe out this sinful clan? This, Chun Daoyan smiled bitterly and did not answer. His injuries were quite serious, and it would be difficult for him to recover in a short period of time. If he were to encounter a strong enemy again, it would be no different from courting death. Moreover, even if he did his best to kill the demons, all the credit would go to Ling Xiao. Although Chun Daoyan did not have to compete with a junior for fame and fortune, he was still an inexperienced person. However, the feeling of being used as a tool was extremely sullen. Oh, Elder Chin's expression seems to be troubled. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows in surprise. Could it be that Elder Chun is sympathetic to the Blood Feather tribe? Let's go. Let's go now. I think Young Master is right. We should take this opportunity to exterminate this evil tribe. Elder Chun took a deep breath and took out 7 or 8 pills from his chinquin bag. He stuffed all of them into his mouth. Haha, I knew it. With Elder Chin's resolve, how could you make such a mistake? Ling Xiao nodded and turned to look at Lin Yan, who was still bound to the stone pillar. Suddenly, he slammed his palm down and smashed the unconscious son of destiny into a pile of minced meat. Beep. Congratulations to host for successfully killing the son of Providence. You have received 7,000 luck points and 70,000 villain points. Beep. Congratulations to the host for successfully killing the son of destiny and obtaining the Flame's Spirit Battle Constitution. After doing this, Ling Xiao waved his hand to summon the Golden Dragon Jade Carriage, sat cross-legged on it, and walked towards Ning Province with Yi Qingchan and the other two women. Behind him, the Immortal Form Sect Master waved his hand and bellowed. All elders and disciples above the God Emperor level, follow the young master to battle. Destroy the evil race. Destroy the evil race. Elder Chun. The remaining 4 disciples of the Heavenly Imperial Mansion looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Although senior brother Xiao Shan had indeed died at the hands of Ling Xiao. However, the appearance of the Lord of the Bloodfeather tribe seemed to confirm the fact that Ling Yin had colluded with the Bloodfeather tribe. And as an undying inheritance, the Heavenly Imperial Palace was nominally a vassal of the World Lord Palace. Once this matter was spread out, it would definitely bring about endless trouble. In that case, senior martial brother Qiao really deserved to die. Follow me. Chen Daoyan sighed softly. No matter how unwilling he was, he could not find any fault with Ling Xiao. From the beginning to the end, the young master of the Ling people had played the role of the light of righteousness who hated the evil race. Rumble. The Golden Dragon Jade carriage rolled across the sky. Behind the Golden Dragon Jade carriage, there were many people, and their spiritual power was at its peak, which instantly attracted many people's attention. In particular, the Golden Dragon that was pulling the Golden Dragon Jade carriage exuded a wisp of Sage Realm aura, which shocked many of the experts of the 9 states. If a Sage Dragon Jade carriage was used as a carriage, then who was the young man in the carriage? System. At a point to the 3,000 sword bones. At a point to the forging of the heavenly will. Buzz. While everyone was rushing to Ning Province, Ling Xiao used all the villain points he had plundered recently to cultivate the sword bones and forge the heavenly will. Instantly, a piercingly cold sword essence spread out and dissipated in the blink of an eye. Even so, Yi Qingchan and the others were shocked to the point where they broke out in cold sweat. Second stage, Sage Realm. 82 Sacred Inscriptions. With the 3,000 sword bones, 1,200 sword bones have been formed. With the help of the perfected sword principles and the 1,000 weapons Taoist scripture, there was only one sword immortal in the Azure world. His heavenly will had also increased to 69%. Soon, he would become a true heavenly will body. At the same time, in the Azure world, in the main hall of the Sure family, a young man in a blue robe stood with his hands behind his back. His eyes were extremely calm. Ha! Sure, hurry up and greet young Master Gushan. Beside him, a white-haired old man had a respectful expression as he gave Sure a look. Sure, the young master of the Sure family, greets young Master Gushan. Polychoria was originally the path to invincibility. Unfortunately, in this life, luck is not on your side. The young man in blue smiled, and there was an inexplicable deep meaning on his handsome face. Although his appearance was not as outstanding as Ling Xiao's, he also had a sense of immortality. Especially his eyes, there was a sense of vicissitudes and were extremely deep. On his shoulder, a snow-white raccoon lay quietly. When it occasionally opened its eyes, there was actually a touch of coldness. How do you know the teachings of the Sure family? Sure Yi's expression changed. He suddenly stood up, obviously a little shocked. Your ancestors once fought against immortals in the 9 heavens. They are the backbone of a human race. Forget it. I can't cure your eye disease, but I can point you to a place. Perhaps there will be the answer you want. The young man in blue sighed softly. He suddenly pointed his finger. A ray of light flashed and disappeared into Sure Yi's sea of soul. Now that the lower realm has opened, you better make a decision early. Otherwise, if you miss this opportunity, this fortune may not belong to you. Then, the young man in blue turned and was about to leave. Oh, right. You can only step into the first seal of that place. You cannot enter the second seal. Otherwise, the Sure family will be in big trouble. Master, why are you helping me? Sure frowned. Inside his sea of soul, a lot of information had appeared. However, The secrets hidden within were beyond Shi Yi's expectations. More than that, if this shocking secret is leaked out, it will cause a real disturbance in the azure sky. Why? The young man in blue stopped in his tracks. He suddenly shook his head and smiled. Without another word, he walked out of the Shi family along the mountain path. Dr. Hua, I'm not sure about this master's temperament. However, since he has pointed out the way for you, everything will be decided by you. The white-haired elder's expression was bitter. His eyes were also filled with confusion. In the past, this descendant of the Forbidden Grounds would more or less make some requests when he diagnoses someone. But today he broke this rule. It was truly puzzling. Yes. In the end, Shi Yi didn't say anything else, but a wisp of seriousness appeared in his eyes. To go or not to go? If what the young master said was true, and there was a god buried there, then when he broke the seal, would it cause a real disturbance in the azure sky? But if he doesn't go, he will become a handicapped person. He will not be able to lead the Shi family back to its former glory. He will not be able to handle this chaotic world. However, what made Shi even more confused was, how did this young man, who looked less than 1,000 years old, know about his ancestors' whereabouts and the Shi family's ancient saying? Who was he? Chapter 1463. Outside the Shi clan, in a dense ancient forest, the young man in blue stood with his hands behind his back, looking at the distant sky. At this moment, there was also a confused expression on his face. My lord, why did you help Shi Yi recover from his eye disease? The next moment, he suddenly turned his head and looked at the civet cat on his shoulder. His tone was extremely respectful. It was as if he was just the civet cat's servant. Back then, the stone ancestor went against the heavens and slayed the immortals. He broke the forbidden ancient and resisted the otherworldly calamity. Now, Sai, consider it as leaving an opportunity for the human race. The civet cat suddenly opened its mouth and spoke in human language. Even its pair of red vertical pupils flashed with a deep color. Opportunity. Since ancient times, the world has changed. Immortals, demons, humans, and demons have all experienced reincarnation and become the main characters of this world. However, with the change of fate, which race can truly stand above the heavens? Haven't we been fooled and schemed against time and time again? The civet cat shook its head and smiled. Its tone was extremely vicissitudes of life. It was as if it had experienced the ancient times and seen through the heavenly Tao. It was born with the epic and was independent of the six paths, my lord. Do you mean, in this chaotic world, the unforeseen event from 190,000 years ago will happen again? This time, I can't see through it. It's as if everything is under control, but it's also outside of control. Forget it. My lonely mountain is only here to continue the inheritance, to record the rise and fall of the world, to enter the mortal world, to break the mortal world, and to walk beyond the world. With that, the civet cat closed its eyes again. It curled up on the young man in blue's shoulder and fell into a deep sleep. This, the young man in blue seemed to understand, but he was also extremely confused. In the end, he didn't ask any more questions. He lifted his foot and walked toward the distant mountain. The final destination of all living things in this world was ultimately a handful of yellow soil. No matter how glorious it was, it couldn't escape fate. The end of the path of immortality was never immortality. It was just a change between prosperous times and chaotic times. Sometimes the prosperity you see is too one-sided. Promise me, the moment you see the light, you must remember to look at the surrounding darkness before you decide whether to embrace it or not. A day passed in the blink of an eye. Ning Province, Central Divine Mountain. The Blood Feather clan members gathered in the main hall. They all looked extremely gloomy and terrified. Today, the soul tablets of the Blood Feather clan master, the 5 elders, and hundreds of clansmen were all shattered. Such grievous news almost instantly crushed the Tao hearts of all the Blood Feather race members. Ancestor, what should we do? Yes, old ancestor, Let's run. The clan lord must have provoked an extraordinary existence. Once they kill their way up to the sacred mountain, I'm afraid even you, old ancestor, will not be able to escape death. Everyone cried out and looked at the blood-robed old man in the hall with complicated expressions. Hearing this, a wisp of killing intent immediately appeared on the old man's gaunt and terrifying face. As the ancestor of the Blood-Feather tribe, Yu Zhonglang's cultivation had long reached the 8th level of the Saint Realm. Even in the entire 9 continents, there were only a few people who could fight against him. However, the Blood-Feather race's ancestor's heart was cold, and he felt extremely uneasy. The leader of the Blood-Feather tribe and 5 elders had died. The Blood-Feather tribe had lost 6 saints. Such a loss could be said to have caused the Blood-Feather race to fall off their pedestal. However, where could the Blood-Feather race escape to, given the size of the 9 prefectures? Sai, gather the people and follow me to the Dead Soul Reef. In the end, Yu Zhonglang pondered for a moment and sighed softly. What? The Dead Soul Reef? Hearing this, the Blood-Feather race who had been clamoring suddenly fell silent. This place was the most famous forbidden area in the 9 prefectures. It was rumored that this place was originally a place where an evil demon cultivated. It was filled with cursed dead souls. Any living thing that entered would be devoured by thousands of souls and die an unnatural death. Even the Green Ghost tribe did not dare to go near it. Back then, when the Sacred Emperor unified the 9 prefectures, he had used his monstrous divine power to seal this place. It had been thousands of years since then. As one of the 3 major god tribes, the Blood-Feather race had occupied the 9 prefectures for many years and offended many clans. Once today's matter spread out, they would probably be quickly destroyed by the combined forces of others. Only a forbidden area like the Dead Soul Reef could be considered a safe place for the Blood-Feather race. Ha ha! Ancestor Zhonglang, did something happen to the Blood-Feather race? Why is the atmosphere so oppressive? However, just as the Blood-Feather race members fell silent, a hearty laugh suddenly came from outside the main hall. Yu Zhonglang narrowed his eyes and released his 8th grade saint aura. He was like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. Ancestor Zhonglang, is this how the Blood-Feather race treats their guests? At the same time, another gentle and ethereal voice came from outside, which made Yu Zhonglong relax a little. 2 figures walked in slowly. One of them was a young man in a golden robe with an unruly expression. He had eagle-like eyes and thick eyebrows, and his eyes were fierce. The other was a young girl in a fur coat. She had a tranquil smile on her delicate face. Her eyes were pure gold, and her pupils were vertical. Her skin was snow white, and her legs and lower abdomen were exposed. It was really extremely seductive. Demon King Palace. Sensing the surging demonic aura from the 2 of them, Yu Zhonglong frowned slightly, but a look of realization appeared on his face. Just a few days ago, Demon King Palace had suddenly sent news that a lord from the upper world had come and wanted to join forces with the Blood-Feather race. Originally, the lord of the Blood-Feather race was still hesitating. Why did Demon King Palace choose the Blood-Feather race instead of the Black Demons and Blue Ghosts? However, at this moment, Yu Zhonglong suddenly had a slight hesitation in his heart. If he could take this opportunity to join forces with Demon King Palace and obtain the protection of that lord from the upper world, the crisis of the Blood-Feather race might be easily resolved. After all, Demon King Palace's status in the 9 states was no less than the 3 deity races. And to be able to make this force bow down, it must be an extremely terrifying existence from the upper world. Ancestor, are you planning to refuse to join forces with Demon King Palace? The young girl in fur coat glanced around the main hall, but she did not see the lord of the Blood-Feather race. She was surprised. Today, Demon King Palace had come for the lord of the Blood-Feather race. But it seemed that he was not in the race. No, you 2 misunderstand. How can we refuse such good intentions? Yu Zhonglong shook his head and smiled. Now that the 9 states is in chaos, if we join forces, we can wipe out all enemies in the world. No matter how bad it is, we will not be casually destroyed by others. With your words, we can rest assured. Our saint and that lord are already on their way. Ancestor, please prepare to welcome them with me." The young girl in fur coat and the golden-robed young man looked at each other, and an inexplicable smile flickered in their eyes. Of course, if they knew that the lord of the blood feather race was dead, they would probably turn around and leave immediately. May I ask the two of you, where exactly did that lord from the upper world come from? Where did he come from? I can only tell you that even in the upper world, that lord's identity can be said to be unique. The two of them smiled brightly, and there was undisguised arrogance on their faces. Chapter 1464. The Only One in the World? Yu Zhonglong's eyelids twitched, but he was deep in thought. Obviously, he wanted to borrow the power of the Demon King Palace and the Lord from the upper world to help the Blood Feather tribe survive this calamity. However, once this intention was discovered, it would definitely incur the wrath of that lord. In this situation, the Blood Feather tribe had a slim chance of survival. May I ask why the lord wants to join forces with the Blood Feather tribe? This is not something we can speculate about. Patriarch, please be patient. The lord and the saintess will be here soon. The girl in fur shook her head and smiled, pretending to be profound. In the past, she would not have dared to speak to the patriarch of the Blood Feather tribe like this. However, this was not the past. With the Lord's protection, the Demon King Palace could do whatever they want in the 9 states. The Lord could easily kill the deity race and the sinful race with a flick of his finger. All right, Yu Zhonglong nodded. His mind was full of thoughts, but in the end, he could not think of a solution. He could only take one step at a time. At the same time, at the border of the Ning state, several demonic shadows whizzed across the sky, covering the clouds and the sun. The leader was a green-winged eagle. Its demonic power filled the sky and intimidated the heavens. However, it had the head of a dog. Obviously, this big demon's cultivation had already reached the saint realm. It was impossible for it to be unknown in the 9 states. However, it could only be used as a mount. It was obvious that the powerful cultivator on its back was of a high status. Young master, we should reach the Blood Feather tribe in half a day. 2 figures stood on the back of the green-winged eagle and looked into the distance. One of them was the young man in blue that Ling Xiao had seen in the ancient forest when he came to the lower world. Beside him stood a young girl wearing the robe of the water jade Rosa. The young girl's face was fair and slightly immature, but she already had a beauty that could topple the world. Her eyes were a strange green color, like a fairy in the mountains, ethereal and dreamy. There were 2 transparent wings on her back. They were beautiful and made people want to take pity on her. Behind the 2 of them, there were several figures with strong auras. However, there were no experts protecting them, which was strange. It was reasonable to say that the young master's successor from the lower realm would bring a powerhouse at the peak of the saint stage with them to avoid disaster. However, this group of noble youths had actually descended to the lower realm by themselves. From this, it could be seen that they were extremely confident in their own strength. Yes, are you sure that the Lord of the Blood Feather race has a bronze fragment? The blue-clothed young man's expression was calm, without the slightest ripple. This time, he had come down to the lower realm for the ultimate creation. Coincidentally, on the day he arrived at the Demon King's palace, he received a bronze fragment from the palace. To be more precise, the Holy Maiden of the Demon King Palace had personally presented it to him. Even with the blue-robed young man's experience, he was unable to see through the mysteries contained within the fragment. However, he could vaguely sense that this fragment contained a great opportunity. It was very likely to be related to the ultimate creation of this world. As long as he could find the remaining fragments, he might be able to unravel the real mystery. As for why he did not bring a protector, it was because, in the eyes of the blue-robed young man, the real experience was the sharpening of life and death. What right did those good-for-nothings with slaves have to stand at the top of the world? Don't worry, young master. Sun Er's sense of aura is extraordinary. Many years ago, I met the Lord of the Blood Feather race once. He had the same aura as the bronze fragment. The holy maiden of the Demon King's palace, Hua Sun, smiled gently. Her posture was extremely respectful. As a member of the demon clan, to be honest, her talent was somewhat unique. It was not her physical combat strength, but an innate sense of aura. This sense allowed her to predict the trajectory and strength of an attack in advance when she fought with others. Thus, she was able to make the most accurate response. Of course, with this talent, it was easier for her to search for the world's spiritual treasures. In fact, some inconspicuous treasures were rare treasures in her eyes. She had never missed anything. However, neither Hua Sun nor the blue-robed young man would have thought that the bronze fragment on the Lord of the Blood Feather race had been taken away by Yushwani and given to Lin Yin a year ago. In other words, this treasure that was related to the secrets of heaven and earth would eventually fall into the hands of the Son of Destiny, no matter what method was used. This trip could not be said to be a fruitless one. It was more like they were digging their own graves. That's good. Don't worry. When I obtain the creation of this world, I will bring you to the Azure world. With your talent, the Demon Clan will not mistreat you. The blue-robed young man was the young master of the Demon Clan, the immortal inheritance of the Azure world. Nan Muyun was known as the rare genius of the Demon Clan. His cultivation and combat strength were ranked 8th in the Azure world's 100 talents. He was the real top of the generation. Those who could be ranked in the top 10 of the 100 talents were all in the sequence and had unparalleled combat strength. Nan Miyun's cultivation had already entered the Saint realm. However, due to his old age, his ranking was slightly lower. Thank you, young master. Hua Sun smiled sweetly, and her bright eyes trembled. She was naturally reserved and was somewhat different from the ordinary prides of the lower world. She had no doubts about the young master's identity and status. One had to know that even the Demon King's palace was founded by an expert from the demon-controlling sect. In other words, Hua Sun and all the experts of the Demon King palace were just the young master's servants. Ascending to the upper world and no longer being bound by the shackles of the heavenly way was more realistic and reliable than any opportunity to become an immortal. If she was lucky enough to become the Demon Clan's Demon Clan expert, her future would be limitless. It was very likely that she would become immortal with heaven and earth. Previously, she had already sent 2 of the Demon King Palace's top talents to the Blood Feather tribe to prepare a ceremonial procession and welcome the arrival of the young master. Such a meticulous action would definitely win the young master's favor. Buzz. The green eagle flapped its wings and soared for thousands of miles, attracting countless gazes along the way. At the same time, in the land of the Blood Feather tribe, suddenly, dark clouds appeared in the sky. A terrifying force swept up the wind and clouds, covering the entire Blood Feather sacred mountain. Could it be that Lord has arrived? In the main hall, Yu Zhonglong narrowed his eyes and took the lead to walk out of the hall. 2 of the Demon King Palace's top talents followed closely behind him. The entire Blood Feather tribe was completely shaken at this time. Countless figures walked out of the main hall and looked toward the sky, their eyes filled with fear and awe. Demonic force. What a terrifying demonic force. It was at least at the Saint realm, and it was an indescribably terrifying dragon force. Demon King Palace's expert. However, the moment the figure appeared in the sky, a trace of confusion appeared on the faces of the Blood Feather tribe members. There seemed to be too many people. In the sky, numerous figures appeared and stood respectfully. In front of the crowd, a golden dragon stretched across the void, exuding a vast Saint realm aura. But why did it seem to be dragging a carriage behind it? That posture, it was like an animal. Chapter 1465. Is this the Lord you're talking about? Yu Zhonglong stood in front of the palace, his eyes filled with surprise. As expected of a lord from the upper world, he actually captured a saint stage expert of the Demon King Palace and made him his mount. Moreover, the several figures on the Jade Chariot were extremely otherworldly. They must have come from the upper world. However, why did the old man behind the chariot look so familiar? No. The young lady in fur shook her head slightly. Although there was a hint of surprise in her eyes, it was obvious that she was stunned. The young man sitting on the dragon chariot simply made people want to have a beast desire. No, no. Yu Zhonglong's face froze. Suddenly, he thought of something and his eyes widened. Ancestor, what's wrong? Could it be that an enemy has come knocking on our door? The young lady in fur smiled disdainfully and looked at the golden-robed young man. There was no trace of panic on her face. Even they could feel the terror of this group of people, especially the young man in black. He dared to use a sacred dragon as his chariot, which showed his noble status. However, no matter how noble he was, could he be more noble than the young master of the demon-controlling sect? The immortal inheritance was the pinnacle of power. Both of you, to be honest, an enemy has indeed come knocking on our door. Yu Zhonglong nodded solemnly. At this moment, he finally understood why the old man beside the young man looked so familiar. Wasn't that the immortal transformation sect master, Hua something? Haha, don't worry, ancestor. With the two of us here, no one can touch the Bloodfeather tribe today. The golden-robed young man sneered, his eagle eyes filled with mockery. Then, he lifted his foot and walked out of the palace. He looked up at the sky and shouted coldly, "Everyone, I am Feng Xiao from the Demon King Palace. Today, no matter what enmity you have with the Bloodfeather tribe, I advise you to buzz." Before Feng Xiao could finish his words, the young man in black suddenly stretched out a palm from the sky and pressed down horizontally. Suddenly, a golden palm print condensed in the sky and fell with a loud bang. At this moment, the arrogance on Feng Xiao's face had completely disappeared before it completely disappeared. He could feel that the palm print contained a wisp of Saint Will, which was 10,000 times more terrifying than the Saint Stage Elders of the Demon King Palace. F***CK. Looking at the palm print falling from the sky, Feng Xiao's face changed greatly. Golden light rose around his body, and he turned into a demon shadow that was dozens of feet long. He flew up, trying to avoid the attack. However, right at this moment, he noticed to his surprise that the space before him seemed to have stopped, and no matter how he shouted, he wasn't able to make a single sound. Boom! In the end, the palm smashed down, directly crushing Feng Xiao's figure to the ground, turning him into a pile of flesh and blood. Gulp! When they saw this scene, no matter if it was the young woman in fur clothes or ancestor Bloodfeather, their eyes suddenly narrowed. Just like that, Feng Xiao's cultivation was at the 6th grade of the Exalted Realm. Even in the entire 9 prefectures, they were considered top-notch existences. Moreover, the demon clan's physical body was the strongest among their peers. How did it shatter with a single palm strike? Kill! Ling Xiao sat in his dragon carriage and looked down coldly at the people below. There was not a trace of emotion on his face. A mere mongrel stupid eagle actually dared to show off its prowess in front of him. Even the young master of the Divine Feather Clan, Huang Luoyi, could only bow his head in front of him and did not dare to show any signs of arrogance. Demon King Palace? What a joke. Wait a minute. When she saw the countless figures rushing down from the sky, the young woman in fur clothes' pretty face froze. She hurriedly walked to the front of the palace and bowed to Ling Xiao. Young master, Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly and raised his hand slightly. The immortal form sect master and the others immediately stopped in midair and did not dare to act rashly. When they saw this, the Bloodfeather clan members became even more terrified. Who exactly was this young man? How could he make a group of venerable realm experts so obedient? Young master, I am Bai Qing, a disciple of the Demon King Palace. I am here on Lord Nanmu's orders to discuss an alliance with the Bloodfeather clan. I hope that young master will show mercy. The young woman in fur clothes' eyes trembled, and the arrogance from before disappeared. At this moment, she only hoped to stall for time until the saintess and young master Nanmu arrived. Then, the crisis would naturally be resolved. Lord Nanmu, alliance? Ling Xiao nodded slightly. His expression was still gentle and calm. However, in the next moment, he waved his hand again and said in a cold voice, "Kill them all." Boom! Tens of thousands of feet of spiritual light shot into the sky. The immortal form sect master took the lead and charged toward Bai Qing. Chun Dunyan hesitated for a moment before taking the initiative to meet the Blood Feather Clan ancestor. In an instant, the Blood Feather Clan's battle cries shook the sky and cheers rose and fell. It was very lively. Ling Xiao glanced at Xinyuan Weiyang beside him and smiled. "Weiyang, go and try the halberd I gave you." All right, young master, I will go now." Xinyuan Weiyang's pretty face froze. She was clearly nervous. Although she had followed Ling Xiao to kill countless evil spirits, this was the first time she had done something like exterminating an entire clan. However, when she remembered that the Bloodfeather clan was one of the 3 sinful clans, she quickly suppressed the fear in her heart. Suddenly, a ray of blood light appeared between heaven and earth. Then, Xinyuan Weiyang descended from the sky with the blood halberd in her hand. Her white robes fluttered in the wind, and her black hair danced in the wind. There was an inexplicable sense of valiance. Rumble. In a short moment, spiritual light collided on the Blood Feather sacred mountain and destroyed the sacred mountain. Countless Blood Feather clan members were suppressed and killed. It was like purgatory on Earth. Apart from the Blood Feather ancestor and 2 other Saint Realm experts who were barely able to hold on, the entire Blood Feather clan was quickly slaughtered. Roar. Accompanied by a roar, demonic light suddenly bloomed around Bai Qing's body. Her body expanded several times, and she leaped into the air like a ferocious tiger. However, unlike ordinary tigers, Bai Qing's body was covered in snow-white fur. It was crystal clear and beautiful. "She's a white tiger?" Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows, and a playful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "It's a pity that her bloodline is too low. Otherwise, I could tie her up and make her a pet slave." "Damn bastard. I won't let you go even if I die." At this moment, the Blood Feather Clan ancestor, who was repeatedly forced back by Chun Daoyan, suddenly roared angrily. A pair of blood wings spread out, and he looked up at Ling Xiao with hatred in his eyes. In the next moment, the Blood Feather Clan ancestor flapped his wings and suddenly disappeared on the spot. A ripple appeared in the void in front of Ling Xiao. A pair of palms appeared out of thin air and were about to kill Ling Xiao and the other 2 on the spot. But, just as the killing intent in Yu Zhonglong's eyes surged, he suddenly felt an extremely oppressive aura coming from behind him. It was as if a demon that was several times larger than him had quietly appeared behind him and was looking at him with a pair of cold and fierce eyes. Gulp. Inexplicably, Yu Zhonglong suddenly felt extremely fearful. But, before he could turn his head to look, he felt a sudden pain in his back. Then, a palm pierced through his chest and came out of his body. Chapter 1466. Puchi. Yu Zhonglong's lips trembled slightly. He turned his head and saw a 10 feet tall mighty figure standing behind him. It was a man clad in battle armor. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well, and even seemed a little wooden. At this moment, there was no aura emitting from his body. However, it was stifling and suffocating. Roar. Another roar came from the main hall. Bai Qing's figure fell from the sky. Her bones were all broken, but there was still a trace of vitality left. Just now, Ling Xiao ordered the sect master of the Immortal Transformation sect to take action. It was not to kill Bai Qing, but to capture her so that Ling Xiao could find out which lord from the upper world was behind her. Ninmu? That's a pretty cool surname. However, if he was from the upper world, why would he join hands with the Bloodfeather tribe? There must be something fishy going on. Although Ling Xiao did not have to worry about anything in the world of souls like he did in the upper world, it was better to be cautious. Heaven and earth fell silent. Ling Xiao's figure descended from the sky and landed beside Bai Qing. At this moment, the white tiger girl's fur was dyed red. Her body was broken and blood flowed down from the corner of her mouth. When she saw Ling Xiao, her eyes flashed with hatred. She struggled to open her mouth and said, "You will regret this. All of you will die. I'm curious. Who gave you such confidence?" Ling Xiao smiled. He did not search Bai Qing's soul in front of the people from the heavenly imperial palace. Instead, he lifted his foot and stepped on her face. Hee hee. I'm afraid I'll scare you to death if I tell you. The lord behind my Demon King Palace is the young master of the Immortal Inheritance sect, Nan Muyun. Bai Qing smiled coldly. Her internal organs flowed all over the ground. As she laughed, her expression suddenly froze. At this moment, she seemed to see the young man in front of her laughing even more happily than her. How could it be? The words immortal inheritance were a deterrent to any sect. After knowing who his backer was, not only did this young man not feel a trace of panic, he even smiled happily. It was ridiculous. You, tell me, why has Nan Muyun come to the Bloodfeather clan? Ling Xiao shook his head. In fact, he had already guessed it. In the entire Qing Song continent, other than the extreme south, the most famous force that was related to the Demon Clan was the Demon Clan. Meanwhile, the Demon Clan in the extreme south was already in a state of chaos. Naturally, they had no energy to participate in the human clan's secret realm. The only possibility was the blue-robed young man from the demon-controlling sect. It's impossible for me to betray the young master. Kill me if you can. Bai Qing coldly shouted, only to see the young man lifting his leg and stomping on her head. At the same time, a strange force swept over and devoured all of Bai Qing's memories. Just as the soul of the Demon King's young goddess Gong was about to be extinguished, she seemed to hear the young man suddenly speak softly. I've already killed several of the demon-controlling sect's current generation geniuses. In a moment, I'll send Lord Nanmu down to accompany you. Buzz. With a gust of cold wind, not a single person from the Bloodfeather race's holy land was left alive. A smile also appeared on Ling Zhao's face. The bronze fragment. When Ling Yin kindly gave this fragment to him, Ling Xiao could feel the immortal charm contained in it. Just as Nan Muyin thought, Ling Xiao also guessed that this fragment was likely related to the land of the sinful immortals. Moreover, as far as Bai Qing knew, the holy maiden of the Demon King's palace, Hua Sun, also had a fragment and had already given it to Nan Muyun. In this case, it seemed that the young master of the demon-controlling sect had no choice but to die. Ha ha! Young master, the Bloodfeather race has been eliminated. Do you think we should? Chun Daonian walked up to Ling Xiao and bowed slightly. At this moment, the elder of the heavenly imperial mansion's aura had become increasingly weak. There was even a visible wound on his chest. Apparently, it was also caused by the Bloodfeather race ancestor. Of course, Chen Daonian did not care about these injuries at all. He only hoped that he could get away from Ling Xiao as soon as possible. This way, he might still have a chance to live. Elder Chun, you've worked hard. However, I'm afraid you can't leave for the time being. Ling Xiao shook his head. His expression was extremely solemn. Huh? Chen Daonian was stunned when he heard this. Even his body could not help but tremble for a moment. Snatch the bamboo shoots. This young master of the Ling people was obviously going to use him to his death. As you can see, the Demon King's palace is behind the Bloodfeather race. Moreover, I seriously suspect that there is a traitor in the Qing Song team who is in cahoots with the demons. Therefore, Elder Chun, don't worry. I will personally eliminate the demons later. I only hope that Elder Chun can stay behind to bear witness. Ling Xiao sighed softly. He looked a little lonely. Chen Daonian's eyes trembled slightly. In the end, he nodded with a smile. It's really a blessing for the Qing Song to have you, young master. Boom! Just as the two of them were talking, there was a sudden rush of wind in the distant sky. Then, a pair of green wings covered the sky and soon appeared above everyone's heads. Nan Muyun and Hua Sun's expressions changed abruptly. There was a hint of surprise in their eyes. Especially Hua Sun. When he saw Feng Xiao and Bai Qing's bodies, he could not help but exclaim, Qing, brother Feng Xiao. These two were the true top prodigies of the Demon King's palace. Chapter 1467. Today, Nanmuyun and the others came to the Bloodfeather tribe, not to join forces with the sinful tribe, but only for the bronze fragment in the hands of the lord of the Bloodfeather tribe. Seeing the Bloodfeather tribe being slaughtered, to be honest, Nanmuyun did not feel the slightest bit of emotion. Not to mention the Bloodfeather tribe. Even if the Demon King Palace was destroyed, he would not feel any heartache. After all, they were just a slave tribe. Oh, no. Of course he would feel heartache. He was a destined person. How could he be so cold and heartless? However, judging from Hua Sun's words, the aura of the fragment should be on Ling Xiao. His main purpose in coming to the lower worlds was to find the source of the recovery of spiritual qi in this world and obtain it. After all, according to the patriarch of the sect, such a treasure that could cause such a change in heaven and earth must be related to the fate of heaven and earth. Whether it was Ling Xiao or the young lord of the Realm Lord Palace, to be honest, there was not much respect in the eyes of a destined person. What Nanmuyun believed in was that strength was respected. Was it not the nature of a villain to blindly be fearful and curry favor with those in power? As a person of the same generation, Nanmuyun was not afraid of anyone. Brother Nanmuyun, are you looking for this? Ling Xiao smiled and gently clenched his fist. The bronze shard immediately appeared in his hand. He naturally saw Hua Sun's action just now. That kind of strange divine sense was indeed somewhat miraculous. 8th grade Exalted Realm, 5,000 fate points. It was obvious that this woman's spiritual soul was different from ordinary people. She was a good treasure-seeking mouse that could be used. Master Ling Xiao, since everyone knows, there's no need to be so polite, right? Nanmuyun nodded and smiled. His blue robe fluttered in the wind, and he indeed looked somewhat otherworldly. That's what I was thinking. Ling Xiao nodded as well. His eyes were clear as he suddenly took a step forward. Boom! An ear-piercing, buzzing sound resounded through the world. Outside Ling Xiao's body, rays of light appeared and thousands of Daos surged. He was like an immortal god that defied the heavens. Seeing this, Nanmuyun's eyes narrowed slightly. There seemed to be a demon shadow that appeared with a slightly serious expression. Naturally, he did not underestimate Ling Xiao at all. After all, in the past year, the Azure Sky world had been filled with rumors about the young master of the Ling people. Countless geniuses of this generation had been crushed and killed by him. Even the Sky Demon had been severely injured by him, and the Snow Tidal Rock. With all these feats, it was impossible for him to be a piece of trash. Ling Xiao, let's have a fair fight today. The loser will hand over the bronze shard. Nanmuyun's voice was piercingly cold, and there seemed to be spiritual power rising around him. When he first entered the Saint stage and underwent the Saint tribulation, he had condensed a total of 5 Saint runes. In other words, the spiritual power in his body was equivalent to that of 5 saints, which was enough to show disdain for his peers. Furthermore, his taming demon was of an ancient bloodline. Its might was terrifying, and it was not something that a person of the current generation could contend against. However, at this time, Ling Xiao did not say a word of nonsense. The moment he stretched out his hand, the 100 swords behind him immediately floated into the air, piercing through the void with the power to cut the sky, and slashed down horizontally. Hand over the bronze shards? Nanmuyun's thinking was too naive. Boom! Boom! The void shattered, and above the 100 sword shadows, there was a wisp of saint aura. Such power was enough to shock heaven and earth. A solemn look finally appeared on Nanmuyun's face. Then he stretched out his hands, and a vast spiritual power rose. Above his head, a golden decree appeared in the air, and it turned into 1,000 feet in size, enveloping the heavens. On the decree, there was an outline of mountains and seas and the depiction of celestial essence. It was lifelike, and it surged with supreme power. Scrolls of mountains and rivers appeared, as if the cycle of eras was constantly changing. Vaguely, among the mountains and seas of stars, there seemed to be countless phantoms of fiend gods standing, looking down at the world with awe-inspiring eyes. It's the mountain and sea god-demon painting of the taming demon sect. Chen Daonian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he was obviously a little surprised. For immortal inheritances, there would be some famous Dharma artifacts and spiritual treasures in the sect. Although the taming demon sect was most famous for its few great demons with terrifying bloodlines, this mountain and sea god-demon painting was also extremely domineering. It was said that there were dozens of large and small demon souls sealed in this painting, and its power was unparalleled. They did not expect Nen Muyun to bring this supreme treasure out from the lower realm. Buzz, the divine painting unfolded and instantly covered the blue sky. Numerous ancient mountains and phantoms of fiend gods immediately stepped out, blocking the torrent of 100 swords. However, the moment the two collided, the glow on the mountain and sea god-demon painting suddenly stagnated for a moment. Then, everyone was stunned to see that the countless phantoms of fiend gods were directly pierced through by the 100 swords and were slashed into nothingness. Huh? Nan Muyun frowned slightly, and he was obviously a little surprised. The moment his hand seal changed, golden light sprinkled from the divine painting again, and it transformed into countless strange phenomena. However, no matter how terrifying the strange phenomena were, they were still torn apart by the sword shadows in the end. Seeing this, Nen Muyun's eyes suddenly turned gloomy. He stretched out his hand and directly used the mountain and sea god-demon painting as a contract, enveloping and trapping the 100 swords in the painting. Interesting. Ling Xiao smiled, and there was no trace of panic on his face. The moment the black vortex appeared in his eyes, his figure suddenly disappeared from the spot. Buzz. A ripple quietly appeared in the void in front of Nan Muyun. A fist shadow pierced through the void and violently smashed toward his chest. Under the fist shadow, the sharpness was shocking, and tens of thousands of fiend gods flourished, tearing a terrifying crack in the entire heaven and earth. This attack came too strangely, and even Nan Muyun had a look of surprise on his face. Before he could defend himself, Ling Xiao's palm had already landed on his physical body. Boom! Nan Muyun's figure was directly sent flying, and he smashed into the sacred palace on the mountain peak and disappeared without a trace. However, at this moment, Ling Xiao did not have a trace of joy on his face. Instead, he looked a little surprised. The moment his fist shadow landed, he seemed to have felt an extremely strange force enveloping and devouring his spiritual energy and physical strength. Although this kind of devouring did not completely offset the divine power in the fist, it was obvious that, compared to the other children of destiny, Nan Muyun's method was indeed somewhat unique. Su Yin, Wei Yang, go and kill those young men from the demon-controlling sect. Senior Xiong Huan, please stop that green condor. In front of the sacred palace, Yi Qingchan looked up at the sky, and her eyes were filled with coldness. Previously, when Ling Xiao looked at the demon palace's saintess, there was a trace of playfulness in his eyes. In other words, this woman should be of some use to the young master. Although she also wanted to kill her, she could barely spare the life of a woman who was useful to the young master. Yes, Sister Qingchan. Su Yin and Xin Yuan Wei Yang nodded slightly, and their figures suddenly soared into the sky, rushing toward the four demon-controlling sects' heaven's prides. Yi Qingchan, on the other hand, stared at Hua Sun with cold eyes, and gradually a snowstorm began to spread around her. Chapter 1468. Boom! Waves of spiritual aura came from the sky. An endless sea of fire filled the sky. Su Yin reached out with her hand like a fire goddess. Even her hair was burning with crimson flames. She blocked the path of a genius from the demon-controlling sect who was at the 7th level of the Exalt realm. Her cultivation level was much lower than that of Xinyuan Weiyang and Yi Qingchan. But with the power of her spiritual fire, she could crush people of the same cultivation level. On the other hand, Xinyuan Weiyang strode over. A sea of blood floated beneath her feet, and every single step she took was like a shocking wave of blood that shook everyone's hearts. She held the halberd in her hand. It was more than an inch longer than her, and it was extremely intimidating. She swung her halberd horizontally, shattering the void. She had stopped the three heavens favorites from the House of Monsters by herself. The originally clear sky was instantly covered by the color of blood. It was as if a shackle had imprisoned the world. But this blood chi was completely different from the blood feather races. It was not evil at all. Instead, it was sacred and solemn. Just as the Demon King Palace's Saint Realm expert was about to suppress the two women, a mighty and muscular figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Then, without saying a single word, he threw out a punch. "You're courting death." Green-winged demon's eyes trembled. He reached out with his claws, trying to stop the armored figure. But the moment their palms collided, he was sent flying. Blood spurted out of his mouth, and his feathers scattered. He finally fell on the mountain peak. "Are you going to give up? Or do you want me to beat you until you give up?" Yi Qing-chan stepped on the mountain peak. She was cold all over. The space under his feet was frozen into a seal. It was like a snow lotus emitting a bright, immortal glow. Hua Sun's eyes trembled. He suddenly felt a chill in his heart when he saw the demon-controlling sect prodigies being crushed. "All right, then I'll beat you until you give up." Yi Qing-chan did not say anything. She pushed her hand forward, and endless wind and frost swept across the sky. Even a peak venerate would not be able to resist such divine power, let alone an 8th-rank venerate like Hua Sun. Hua Sun clenched her teeth as she looked at the ice crystals falling from the sky. She hadn't made a choice yet. This green-clothed woman was clearly targeting her. Buzz! Behind him, the pair of transparent wings flapped gently, and he was about to escape. However, right at this moment, Yi Qing-chan's lips curled into a charming smile. "Do you think you can escape?" In the blink of an eye, the originally scattered ice crystals suddenly bloomed with a dazzling brilliance. On the other hand, numerous crystalline ice walls suddenly floated up into appearance in an area of around 3 m around Hua Sun, and they directly trapped her within them like a sparrow that was unable to escape. After she was done, Yi Qing-chan turned around and glared at Su Yan. Her eyes were filled with killing intent as she disappeared from the spot. Everyone who was hostile to the young master deserved to die. No, God should also die. Boom! Ling Xiao did not pay any attention to the fluctuations coming from above his head. With Yi Qing-chan's temperament, she knew who to kill and who not to kill. At this moment, his gaze was fixed on the ruins of the temple, quietly waiting for Nan Muyun to appear. The devouring Dao Law. Obviously, the strange fluctuation that Ling Xiao felt just now should be the power of this Dao Law. It seemed that the devouring Dao Law was indeed very fragrant. Before Hua had transformed, Ling Xiao had once wanted to stew her to nourish his body. However, in the end, it was because of this Dao Law and the ancestral dragon bloodline that Ling Xiao vaguely felt that the upper limit of this demonic dragon might not be much lower than that of the Destined One. This way, she could be considered to have saved her life. Ling Xiao raised his head and looked at the mountain river celestial demon painting that spread across the sky. With his strength, it was not difficult to destroy this painting. However, the power of this divine painting was not bad, and it was a pity to destroy it for nothing. Housekeeping was good. Boom! Just as Ling Xiao was secretly muttering to himself, a loud noise suddenly came from the ruins of the temple. Immediately after, Nan Miyun's figure appeared in front of everyone again. At this moment, the blue robe on his body had long been torn, revealing a white jade spirit armor. However, what was shocking was that the spirit armor on his chest had long been completely shattered, and traces of blood seeped out. It was obvious that even with the protection of the divine armor, Ling Xiao's punch still broke his bones. "Ling Xiao, you are indeed as powerful as the rumors say. I was careless just now." Nan Muyang took a deep breath, and there was no trace of panic on his face. Compared to the other children of destiny, his temperament was undoubtedly more tenacious. Immediately after, he took a step forward, and the spirit light around him surged. Vaguely, there seemed to be a devouring power enveloping the surroundings, devouring all the spirit chi in the void. From afar, Nan Muyang was like a black hole in the universe, devouring everything. The black divine light gushed out, and the land within a radius of 1,000 feet turned into a deep demonic abyss. Even the light that fell into it dissipated instantly. Nan Muyang's figure soon appeared in front of Ling Xiao, and he threw out a punch. However, this time, he obviously came prepared. The arm that he stretched out turned into the sharp claw of a demonic beast, and it was filled with a vast demonic power. Ling Xiao's eyes turned cold, and he threw out a punch as well. The moment the two fists collided, the whole world burst into a dazzling light. The void trembled, and heaven and earth trembled. Boom! However, to everyone's surprise, Nan Muyun, who was sent flying by Ling Xiao's punch just now, only retreated a few feet before he regained his balance. Although he was in a bit of a mess, he was far stronger than before. In fact, there was clearly a trace of a smile on his face. His aura had clearly risen after this punch. There's something strange about this Nan Muyun. His aura has actually risen. I've heard that this young Lord Nan Muyun's demonic beast taming is a bit strange. He becomes stronger when he meets a strong opponent. Once he's stalled, it's basically impossible for him to turn the tables. Could it be that Master Ling Xiao is going to be defeated today? The group of Heavenly Imperial Mansion disciples whispered among themselves. After witnessing how terrifying Ling Xiao was, Nan Muyun's current performance was already terrifying. Devouring spiritual energy and turning it into his own, Ling Xiao lowered his head and looked at his palm. There was no trace of emotion on his face. He had already guessed Nan Muyun's trump card. When fighting with him, once one's principle came into contact with his attack, the spiritual energy in the attack would be devoured and turned into his own strength. This method was indeed extremely terrifying. It would be very difficult for ordinary monstrous geniuses to fight him head-on. However, there is always a limit to the devouring power. How could Nan Muyun's physical strength be compared to Ling Xiao's? Since you want to devour, I'll let you devour as much as you want. Ling Xiao smiled. In the next instant, he suddenly took a step forward and threw a punch at Nan Muyun. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.